Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Got Betrayed and Joined the White Dragon Empress Part 14. Before we start, please go support AbrahamJosueSalasRoa for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Chapter 54 Team DX DVS Klepeth. Final Part 4. Moments before. It was the final moment, the battle was in its final stage, and everyone knew it, since many were on the verge of fainting and collapse. Klepeth's minions had almost been destroyed, and only the Trahexa was left standing. Issei, Surziches, Ajuka, Cao Cao, Tobio, Krom Kruich, Shenlong, Tianlong, Aden, Zeus, Izanagi, La, Mahabali, Ra, Tiamat, Quetzalcoatl, Ahura Mazda, Inti, Zamanek and the rest of the gods and transcendental beings. They attacked the Trahexa's heads together, and even cut them off almost all the time from the base of the neck. They had even lost count of how many times they have decapitated that beast and that it continues to regenerate. The gods and powerful beings who could control the earth would create enormous giant arms of earth from the ground to trap the Trahexa and hold it in place while the rest attacked. What came next was the rampant attack of each fire god, and they stormed the heads and vulnerable parts of the beast's body with everything they had. Among those were Thor, Susanu, Indra, Louis Sin, Rajan, Taranis, Belinus, Zeus, Ilyapa, Tlaloc, Ra, Hurricane, Atar, Kal, Amaterasu, Helios, Sol and I. Izanami also joined the attack, her infernal Yomi flames managing to cause serious damage to the Trahexa and slowing its regeneration momentarily. The apocalyptic beast tried to move from where they were holding it, but received several cuts on its arms and heads, which were severed. And being responsible for said cuts, Athena, Mahabali, Morrigan, Ares, Tur, Hachiman, Caillou, Virithragna, Ishtar, Inerta, Era and Ectua. The Trahexa gave a roar of rage or pain as it fired powerful beams of pure energy from its mouths in a desperate attempt to make those insects leave it alone. And although the attack was surprising, it did not go beyond a simple scare thanks to the fact that the gods of water or ocean froze the 7 heads of the beast quickly and together to prevent further damage. Among them were Tsukiyomi, Poseidon, Selene, Mani, Chalchiutlakyu, Pariakaka, Kacha, Kilya, Ardvi Saranahida, Nanner. Including Tianlong and among others. That caused the energy that was supposed to attack to explode in the 7 heads of the Trahexa and that the 7 faces were half destroyed. It was little, but they were progressively doing damage. Little by little. Since it seems that the regeneration and power of that beast are not eternal, although it seems so. Issei and Cao Cao saw how the Trahexa opened one of its mouths and launched a powerful blast of pure energy that went against them, but they both managed to dodge that blast almost without problems and at high speed with their weapons and auras. They managed to cut the jaw of said head of the beast with a few joint and clean cuts. The jaw of said head fell to the ground as it burned in red and gold flames. And it didn't matter that the apocalyptic beast screamed. Trahexa was simply trapped, the attacks generally coming and going. He had no way out. No matter how resistant or how quickly he regenerated, he was nothing before the joint attack of all the gods and transcendental beings of the world. They were already sure of their victory against the apocalyptic beast, but still no one decided to trust. One wrong step and they are more than dead. The damned beast Tiamat at high speed and with his power at full strength, with a fierce lash, he managed to sever one of the Trahexa's heads from the base of the neck. And just before said part regenerated, Tiamat using her aura created a large mass of her chaotic primordial water and threw it at said part where she had cut off that head, preventing it from regenerating. The primordial water Tiamat's chaotic power was also like a type of liquid poison as it can prevent self-regeneration and even kill gods. The attack of the dragon deity was a clear signal for everyone to attack the apocarpic beast without regard. The only thing that was seen after that, they were flashes, explosions and lightning and freezing storms in general attacking the Trahexa. It was then that the eyes of the central head of the Trahexa began to shine, followed by the others. Nobody noticed it. And if they did, they didn't think it was a big deal. But how wrong they were. The Trahexa would roar enormously and fiercely from the 7 heads of him. It was such that it seemed like it shook the entire underworld or even the entire supernatural world. As the beast released a powerful aura that scared everyone without exception. And this caused the beast to free itself from the bonds of the gods of the earth. Trahexa let out some of his power and no one could help but feel fear at the change of environment. Now everyone was struggling to breathe. Even Indra was smiling forcedly and breaking into a cold sweat. By the Mayu. Now what? Surziches asked a rather naive question, and don't give up. Issei's scream caused everyone to see him. It's no use giving up, otherwise why are we fighting here? Whether some of you came for some benefit in exchange for helping, that doesn't matter now. We are the only ones who can face that thing and defeat it once and for all. If you care about this world. Your home. Issei would take a breath and then fight until the end. You said it, darling. Tiamat would wrap herself in his aura that seemed to be fueled even more by his emotions. For my part, I will fight to the last of me. Hey. Don't keep all the fun to yourself. Crom Cruach also raised his aura to its maximum and it seemed to make the very air tremble. Leave something to me. The will of the dead god gives me the motivation to continue. Cao would be enveloped by the divine golden aura of the true Longinus. So I'm not willing to back down. Same here. Surziches gave his opinion while Ajuka just nodded and both began to raise their auras even more. At any moment they must be completely unleashed, especially the Crimson Mao. Seeing how the Sekiruite and those who supported him rushed at high speed and dispersed to attack the Trihixa was the motivation that each god needed to return to the attack. Whether some have other intentions in exchange for helping, the truth be told, they will not let their home and their lives be destroyed by this horrendous beast. Trihixa took flight with his 10 different pairs of wings, ready to destroy the insects in front of him and then finish off the rest and then the world once and for all. On land, and somewhat far from where the battle against 666 was raging, the deadly forces of DXD and each side managed to placate and destroy almost all of Klippa's minions. The losses were not as severe as one would think, but there were still some casualties. But seeing and feeling how the Trihixa raised its aura and power and that the gods and transcendental beings continued to fight made more than one nervous. At this moment, they were their only hope of winning, but obviously they won't leave everything to them. Most of them may not make any difference, but at least the notable ones were determined to join together to help put an end to Trihixa, no matter what. The battle against Trihixa had almost turned in favor of the imposing apocalyptic beast, who seemed to play with those beings in front of him. They were nothing against him, nothing. Trihixa released powerful torrents of pure energy from her 7 mouths, and by just touching several god soldiers from high to low level, she completely eliminated them. Without any mercy. Indra would create a spear in his hand and charge it with a large and powerful amount of divine energy. He threw it against the Trihixa, right in the body where it was supposed to be the chest, and made the beast retreat. Followed by Mahabali with his full aura and a slash of his divine sword, he would manage to cut off 3 heads of the beast. A feat totally worthy of 2 of the strongest gods of mythology in the world, despite being the smallest of all, and that both are in 3rd place in the world top 10. What came next was each god and transcendental being attacking the Trihixa with everything they had. Powerful gusts, cuts, etc. It was like an endless cycle. Some even tried to attack the Trihixa's wings, but they were so hard that they could not damage them. And if they did, they regenerated. Even losing a single wing doesn't seem to unbalance the Trihixa's flight. Amaterasu and Ra went at great speed and head-on against the Trihixa, with their divine swords in hand and their auras at full. The joint attack of both sun gods with their swords on the Trihixa's body seemed to make the beast suffer. In addition to both emanating their divine flames that began to travel through the beast's body, the Trihixa would roar and with a flap of its wings, it would launch multiple bursts of pure energy around it, with the aim of impacting all those insects that surrounded it, as if they were flies. Obviously everyone took evasive or defensive actions. The defenses of Ajuka, Ra, Indra and Hades almost fell before those blocked attacks, as they also protected several with them, and the rest limited themselves to dodging. Surziches launched several small but very powerful spheres of Hakai no Chikara, and these hit the Trihixa in some of its heads, disintegrating parts of them. Midgardsormr even returned to the attack, rising even higher than the Trihixa. Its mouth was so big that it seemed like it could swallow a part of the beast's body. The sleeping dragon would release its fierce venom in large quantities, drenching the Trihixa, who began to roar in rage or pain from that poison. But his condition only worsened when Thor launched his Mjolnir, charged with a powerful and terrifying amount of divine blue rays. The rays used the poison as a reinforcement, causing more agony to the Trihixa. The Trihixa roared in rage as he saw that he was being hit and damaged back and forth by these insects. Just when he was going to attack, Quetzalcoatl appeared behind him and with a movement of his hands, generated several spears of wind and fire, which struck the Trihixa in its back, and the fire powered by the wind spread to cause more damage to the beast, as the goddess created more powerful currents of wind that seemed to cut the beast. Followed by Odin stabbing one of the beast's heads with his spear Gugner after throwing it, and after a movement of his hands, the divine spear generated a powerful explosion that destroyed said head that he stabbed, and the one-eyed god, by simply raising his hand, would make his spear return to his hand. Trihixa would raise her fist to hit whoever was nearby. Hades faced that blow and counterattacked it with his scythe and his full power. The impact of the enormous fist and the scythe created a strong tremor that was generated by the simple wave. Izanami went to the aid of his equal from another mythology, and using 2 divine evil katanas wrapped in their infernal red-black flames, he gave Trihixa several deep cuts on his back, and the flames prevented him from regenerating in that area. Only for seconds, Susanoo attacked said vulnerable area made by her mother. She launched an Ajanata enveloped in divine aura and lightning from it, fiercely electrocuting the beast. What did you think of that, ugly? Susanoo made fun of the beast, as she almost usually does with all of her opponents. Optimism is his thing. The Trihexa with one of its heads observed both gods, mother and son, opened the mouth of said head to launch a torrent of pure energy. But Susanoo and Izanami would disappear at high speed, dodging the attack. Alone so that within seconds, Tiffin delivers a powerful blow charged with lightning and fire to the Trihexa in the body, in addition to manipulating the weather with his artificial clouds, creating fierce and enormous hurricanes of fire and lightning to seriously damage the beast. Issei was flying at high speed in the air, covering the Trihexa's body as best he could, as he and his wyverns launched fierce red-green flames. He was determined to burn that thing no matter what. Crom Cruich with his claws and her arm in her giant form, she would give a powerful blow that decapitated one of the Trihexa's heads. Only for a few seconds later, Tiamat attacked said cut area with her chaotic primordial water to prevent it from regenerating in said part. Ereshkigal along with Nergal, Nanazu and Era went to the attack against the Trihexa, launching multiple deep and rapid cuts with their scythes in order to somehow sever the vitality of that beast. Yun Kimmel would make his scythe shine, and this it would grow several meters tall, thus giving this a powerful slash that cut off a part of the Trihexa's body, along with two heads and its left arm. Thobio with his darkness would create several giant dogs made of said darkness, along with their cursed red-black flames. The young man's dogs attacked a part of the Trihexa's body to fiercely tear it apart and burn it with their infernal flames and darkness that acted as a reinforcement. Tsukiyomi in conjunction with Nyx, Earbus, Tartarus, Mani, Nanner, Angraminyu, Kilya, Kek, Metzel and other gods of night or darkness, they created a magic circle that launched a powerful burst of pure darkness with purple details that, upon impact with the right arm of the Trihexa, said limb turned black and disintegrated like dust. The darkness destroys and opaques what be it, no matter how. Surziches would create a ball-sized Hakai no Chikara sphere in his hand and throw it at Ajuka, who caught it with his magic circles. With a movement of his fingers he made some calculations and equations, Ajuka would manage to modify his friend's attack. Immediately afterwards, the super demon of Astaroth launched his friend's Hakai no Chikara sphere against the Trihexa. And soon, the destructive sphere became several ropes of Hakai no Chikara, and that these extend to trap the Trihexa in his body, where his torso would be. Tying him in said area was not that complicated, only for seconds said area to begin to disintegrate rapidly, as Surziches had his hand raised with his aura rising. He must make sure to prevent that thing from regenerating. Shenlong with his combined and concentrated lightning and fire would release a strong torrent of these combined elements, opening a somewhat deep hole in the Trihexa in one of its vulnerable areas. Tianlong took advantage of that and launched his powerful icy breath into said hole in the beast's body, and as he increased the intensity and density of his ice. Within seconds, multiple huge thick pillars of ice emerged from the Trihexa's body, making the beast now look like it had horns of ice all over its body, even in parts where there would be no horns, like the mouth, eyes, etc. For his part, in the distance, Mitsaya with his Innovate Clear would create several monstrous heads, and these would shoot powerful torrents of pure energy, white magic and black magic respectively. Well, with his Telos Karma, he gave the order and law that said attacks seriously affect the Trihexa. And that happened, the apocalyptic beast roared at those attacks. But Saya, seeing how Ra raised his sword wrapped in his divine aura, used Telos Karma and gave a simple order. With this, the Egyptian sun god's energy-cutting attack was able to cut a part of the right side of the Trihexa's body, along with two of its heads and its right arm. Ra was a little surprised at his own feat, but put it aside. They had to continue. But Saya Kanzaki smiled at this as he raised his hand, creating several chimera-like creatures almost 100 meters tall. And with a simple order, these creatures went to attack the Trihexa, making things more complicated for the new enemy entities. The Innovate Create creatures tore the Trihexa's body and launched powerful bursts of energy that hurted. Even with the surprise of those sudden creatures who were allies, Cao Cao would raise true longiness from him and create the divine swords of his balance breaker around him. Said divine swords of the spear went against the Trihexa with such force that they pierced the beast's torso, followed by huge and powerful explosions in said area that damaged the Trihexa even more, also with a little help from Mitsaya with his Telos Karma, since he was on the lookout for the most lethal attacks that could cause serious damage to the beast and prevent its attack regeneration. At that, Cao Cao would notice that his spear gave him a warning pulse. That was, someone was missing with him. Upon realizing it, the human would begin to look everywhere, trying to focus on who was missing among them all, but nothing. She was not here. Curse. For all the battle against this thing, I didn't even notice. The human cursed his certain lack of attention, although the will of Elohim did not blame him. They were fighting seriously against the Trihexa and could not be distracted by small things, but The will of the biblical God in the true Longinus continued to transmit advice to Cao Cao, who quickly created a communication circle in his ear. He must warn him. Although he doesn't know the reason why. For his part, Issei continued attacking the Trihexa with everything he had. He gave it fierce claws with his scarlet jet energy claws, along with his fire throughout his body, and with his wyverns, he created his flying blades wrapped in their flames. And aura to add even more damage to the beast. But in that, and Ost, I do ice. The brunette noticed that a communicative circle appeared in his ear, and he recognized the voice. What happens now, Cao Cao, because I don't think there's time to chat or anything. Issei stopped his attacks while he watched the rest attack the Trihexa with everything they had. We can't stop for a second, I know. However, there is a certain problem that I didn't notice until now. Cao Cao would pause a little, tensing the brunette a little. In case you didn't notice, Valery is not here fighting. What Issei was almost shocked by what he heard and even got a little scared. How is he not here fighting? That's what I've noticed. She's not there. I don't know where she is. And with all this battle, I can't focus on it even if it focuses me. Even with the help of the true Longinus I can't locate it, Cao Cao said. Be damn. Issei would look around, trying to focus on his beloved, but nothing. He tried to use his senjutsu to track her, but damn, the intensity of the battle and all the energies of everyone at full capacity prevent him from being able to track her. He must find her, he has to. Meanwhile, Trihexa continued to receive attacks from all the gods and transcendental beings. Even Messiah's creatures were giving it a damn problem, and no matter how much he destroys them, they suffer little damage and more respawn. It was in that even receiving all those attacks, the Trihexa with one of its heads would manage to focus on the young Securiute flying a little below, who seemed distracted for some reason. Trihexa didn't understand it, but she admits that she is curious about that brat. He has the auras and blood of Great Red and Office, which makes him a rare specimen, even unique. Even though the apocalyptic imperial beast only he follows his principles of destroying everything, he also has a certain consciousness in his being. Although he cannot interact with anyone normally, he can feel curious. Hence, Trihexa with one of his heads would charge energy into his mouth as he continued to receive the attacks of those insects. His regeneration helped him not to lose focus, and he cared little about the attacks of beings like Tiamat, Indra, Mahabali and Krom-Kruch. Nothing was going to distract him from this. Nothing. And already with sufficient energy and moderately charged, the Trihexa of said head would launch a huge burst of pure energy. One that he did not give to anyone in his path, and if so, everyone dodged it. Not knowing that it was going straight to the young Securiute. Issei, for his part, was still focused on concentrating with his senjutsu to find Valery's presence, ignoring everything that was happening around him. He may be worrying excessively, but she has not appeared at any time. He hasn't even gotten close to her in most of the battle. He had to. Partner, be careful above. At Drake's shout, Issei would feel the danger nearby and by inertia, he would look in the direction where the danger came from. Seeing that enormous burst of pure energy go against his person at high speed, he could not react in time as I wanted to, and the direct impact of the enormous gust on the Securiute dragged him down. Whereupon impact with the ground, there was a strong explosion on the ground and no one seemed to have noticed it due to the intensity of the battle. When the smoke cleared, Issei was seen on the ground inside a large crater. Almost all of his armor was destroyed. He only had the chest part left, the very damaged right gauntlet and the entire left, but he remained there without moving and did not seem to be breathing. His eyes were almost closed and bleeding as if he were crying tears of blood. Where could you notice that these were off? It seemed. Partner, answer me. Ice partner. Drake began to call desperately and worried about his partner, beginning to sink into the depths of his consciousness, hoping that he is not gone yet. Amid the Haidu residence. Still tidying up in the kitchen, Mickey felt a fierce chill run through his body, just as he felt a pang in his heart. That was it. Ice. My baby. She didn't know how, but she felt that her little one was in great danger. It could be the so-called mother's instinct that is like a sixth sense that only mothers have to know if their son or daughter was safe and well. And he admits that it has been years since he felt it. Since Issei began to grow, Mickey has not felt that mother's instinct again that warned him if something happened to him. He even feels nostalgic. Still. No. She can't think negative. Her little one is fine. She will trust that he is fine. She can't lose faith. Opening your eyes and seeing yourself in a place where there is only darkness gives you more than one doubt and a lot of fear. Issei saw himself in that place. He didn't feel anything. Remember that because of his distraction and worry, received a direct attack from the Trihexa and then. No. It was then that, without expecting it, a vision would appear in front of him. Which showed him and what he looked like on the outside, so seriously injured that he looked like a bleeding corpse. Just to stop. That after a few seconds, the vision changed and showed the battle that everyone was fighting against the Trahixa, but that seemed not to be enough because the beast continued to resist the attacks on its being and regenerated in one way or another, and then attacked either with blasts from their mouths or with their fists, and suddenly, the vision would change again and would stare at Tiamat, Cao Cao, Krom Kruich, Surziches and Ajuka, fighting hard against the Trahixa with everything they had. The dragon deity with its chaotic primordial water left it vulnerable at the beast, and the Crimson Mau launched enormous spheres of Hakai no Chikara that seemed to disintegrate the beast's body, limb by limb. Seeing that made Issei raise his hand, as if wanting to reach them, but he couldn't. His hand was shaking and he didn't feel any strength. Now, he didn't feel like continuing. It would be useless for him to get up and try to face that ridiculous Trahixa beast again. And suddenly, he felt that he was not alone in that place. Don't continue fighting anymore. You just can't defeat that thing. Issei recognized that feminine voice, which was part of a memory that he tried to keep in the depths of his mind. Not because he simply hated him, but it was proof of his own weakness. Just give up and stay here by my side. Issei would feel how thin arms surrounded his neck from behind. He could feel the intoxicating warmth that emanated from them. The soft aroma they gave off was horribly familiar, too familiar that it didn't matter if hundreds or thousands of years passed, he would always remember it. It's so easy to leave everything behind. Deep down you know it. The sensual tone with which he spoke, the soft sensation he could feel on his back. Long ago he would have killed for that simple closeness with the opposite sex. But now he wasn't quite sure he appreciated it in the same way. Issei could not deny that this familiar presence was very important, the trigger for all the adventure he had experienced so far, the people he met, the joys he experienced, the tears he had shed. All of that was because of her. You just have to die for me. So simple to say, difficult to do, why not just ignore it? At the beginning of their adventure, he was weaker than Kaneko, slower than Kiba, his magical control was worse than Asia's. And not even compared to Akeno. And even with everything he had progressed until before that night, that fact he hadn't changed much. Every time he got stronger, the others got stronger. Even with his balance breaker, Kiba and Zenobia were still faster than him, even more experienced. With Kaneko was the same when she accepted her inheritance, just like Akeno, and not to mention Roswas. Even Asia's magic was still better than hers, because she only knew how to hit and use her offensive aura. That's why Ria said that to him that night, because he was useless, which is the weakness of her own longiness, and she perceived that to be the case. You just have to die for me. Even when it was Kyoto and he obtained the Triania, his power was unstable. His new speed was only superior to Kiba's in a straight line, but not in maneuvering, and he had no ways to fight in that way. His thick armor was ridiculously slow despite his absurd resistance, that even Kaneko and single use. Even Roswas can launch attacks just as powerful as those from his cannons, and without spending as much magic. Unlike him who wears out easily. You just have to die for me. When he went with Valery and she helped him, in addition to learning a lot from each of her new friends, he admits that he improved a lot, he understood that in magic and aura, he would never compare with others, and his body had a limit, that's why he trained physically. And when he obtained the crimson armor, he truly felt that he was no longer useless like before, that his new style would make a difference. And he believed it even more when he obtained the wyverns, the dividing gear again and even the scarlet armor, 50% of Drake's power, but you just have to die for me. Seeing how everyone is fighting out there, he can see that he can't compare to many, or maybe all of them out there. They all had better techniques, magic and better weaponry, as well as ridiculous powers. Even Tiamat had surpassed him by far. And now, in the state he is in. Even if the others managed to defeat the Trahixa without his help. You just have to die for me. What will happen when everyone sees how useless it is? What will happen if Valery and Tiamat see it like that? Will they see that he is useless and regret being with him? The others, with whom he even repaired his friendships, will they also leave him aside when they know how useless he still is, despite so much? What will happen when he realizes that he has been left behind? You just have to die for me. He would hate the world, the one he swore to protect, because he believed in the future. He would hate every living creature, simply to destroy everything without leaving any trace in the world. Simply left behind in solitude. Simply left behind in sadness. Simply left behind in pain. You just have to die for me. Wow, you really are pathetic. A second voice caught his attention. The young brown man raised his expectant gaze to his interlocutor. They just beat you up a little, and you want to become hopelessly emo. Sha. San. Issei was surprised and couldn't believe that he was seeing the strongest female Sekiryuite of all again and the rest of the holders were also here. All. Included. B. Belzard-san. We do not know. We just felt like we should come see you. Belzard spoke to him with such sincerity, surprising the brunette. It was the first time that he heard him speak to him normally, since the last and only time he saw him. He only told him that about the op-eye dragon, to his shame. Why do you sink into self-abandonment and self-abuse? Contempt. Because I'm useless. Issei would look down, looking regretful and depressed. It has always been like this. It never mattered how hard I tried or how much power I could generate and use, the experience was never with me. And now. At a critical moment like this. I don't do any difference. I only have my fists, my fire and my aura. And nobody. If I'm still alive, I think it's pure luck. Unlike those fallen soldiers who look the same as me, but didn't suffer the same luck. Ice-chan. Issei would attract the attention of the young man, who stopped by to see her without encouragement. Why do you always put yourself down? Didn't you set goals before? Didn't you promise to be stronger? For someone like me who has no magic or experience in any combat style. I'm useless. Even Sarerg-san who doesn't have magic, he is more experienced than me. Issei's eyes seemed to become more empty with every word he said. This world values the talented or the experienced more, and an inexperienced like me is useless, no matter how strong he is. Why am I here? I just wanted a normal life, but all of that was taken away from me and denied. And every time I just keep seeing how useless I am. Slight tears would come out of Issei's empty eyes. By never being strong, neither physically nor emotionally, I've only seen how useless I am, unlike the rest. No one is born strong at the beginning, Ice-chan, not even those from powerful lineages are strong when they are just born. Why don't you recognize your own value? Why continue rejecting what you have? The brunette clenched his fist slightly at what Issei said. No. You don't reject what you have, you just feel that you don't deserve it. That only being what you are defines you, and not your way of being. What you want is to forget those days in which you were strong enough to protect the ones you care about. What you want is to forget all your failures and make it seem like you have never lost, because you believe that the simple fact of losing is a symbol of weakness. You even fear that you are not good enough, strong now to protect what matters to you. And what if it is like that? Issei spoke with an empty tone, and even with his gaze lowered. No matter how many times I became strong, everyone managed to catch up with me until they surpassed me. I always lost everything I wanted, no matter how strong I was. Really, why am I here? Why do I continue to insist on a world that does not value those who have no special value? Do you think so? Belzerd would take the floor. I know that it is difficult to accept your own weakness after failure, that you beg for power. You fear that you are weak and useless because you believe deep down that your compatriots only love you and follow you because you have the power. And if it were the opposite, it wouldn't be like that. The brunette remained silent at what Belzerd said. Maybe at first, for example, that red-haired girl from Grimmery only chose you just because she discovered that you had power, the boosted gear. But over time, she began to value you more and more as a person, you know. Those words caught the brunette's attention a little. The same for everyone around you. Even your beloved, Valery Lucifer, loves you for who you are and not for what you are. If not, why do you think she helped and comforted you that night? Since even thanks to you, she accepted her failures and pain from her past to be able to move forward better and never give up, where you gave her what she unconsciously always looked for. Brat, you have the loyalty, pride and honor of a dragon, just like the determination that is in the human heart. Even no matter how your way of being and acting was before, didn't you always move forward, determined above all? And believe it or not, thanks to you, many of your friends, close companions and other beings have changed. Not because of your power, but because of your way of being, although you needed the power for it. But mainly, because of your way of being. Issei didn't say anything. That was. Ice-chan, you have always been like this. Issei would speak again. Even before you got into this crazy world, you were always willing to help others and be kind, not because you wanted something in return, but because you felt it was the right thing to do. Because that was what he did to you. And didn't you continue doing that, even after getting into this crazy world? The brunette would look up a little more after those words. Ice-chan, tell me something. Do you believe in hope and miracles? Issei didn't know what to say to that question. She meditates on it for a moment, and. I don't know. I don't think so. I have never seen or created any miracle before. I just go more for luck or second chances. I don't believe that hope or miracle really exists. Under normal circumstances, everyone would say that hope and miracle are for the weak who cling to something non-existent. Even if so, for us mortals, hope makes us strong. Issei would put on a half smile. The one that still lives deep within us when everything is or seems lost. Observe. Issei would look towards the vision that the blonde indicated to him, seeing how everyone outside continued fighting hard and fiercely against the Trahixa. Everyone seemed tired. Even Tiamat, Krom Kruich, Cao Cao, Surziches and Ajuka do not hesitate to continue in the fight, despite the possibilities of not winning and being gasping for breath from the loss of power. There was no doubt or fear in their expressions, only the determination to continue. He even admits that he is surprised to see that expression in someone like Cao Cao, who was once a villain. Just like in a fighting maniac like Crom Cruch. Even Tiamat, who never believed in such things. Even Surziches and Ajuka are surprised to see them with that expression, since, according to them, demons do not have or believe in hope and only limit themselves to imitating humans. That was, you see. They have not lost the faith to continue, even when they see that everything seems lost. The young man would pass by to see Elsha, who was smiling sincerely. Ice-chan, you have changed and inspired many. To those who never believed in hope, equality, understanding or change. You have brought all that with your presence, and just by being you. Elsha would look at the rest of her equals. You also gave that to them by freeing them from the curse, as well as to Belzerd and I, by showing us that there was a Securitate who, although he had selfish desires, that allowed him to defy his cursed destiny and become a wave of change. You also gave that to each of your friends, what you gave to them. Elsha pointed to her companions in the vision of the battle outside, even with those determined expressions. Hope, Ice-chan. You are right about one thing, under normal circumstances, hope is what humans so easily forget, but we never lose it. Don't lose her, Ice. Never do it. You've always had it, even if deep down you didn't know it or you doubted it. Me too. Don't lose hope. Belzerd would interrupt what Issei was going to say. That which is so fragile, but at the same time gives a power that can overcome anything. Don't lose that flame of hope. They, and no one, have lost it. All the past Securiutes nodded at what the former strongest male Securitate said. Issei would go to see his predecessors. They still believe in him. His friends, colleagues, acquaintances, everyone. They have not lost hope because he inspired them. If they can continue despite everything, then so can he. No, you can stay here. I must fight. For all those who believe in me. No matter the adversity or what I must face, I swore to never run from anything again. I won't. The brilliance and determination would return in Issei's eyes as he raised his gaze. Firmly, I'm going to keep fighting, that's why I'm here. It's certainly just what those two say, just like I said that time. You're strange. I see why everyone trusts you, especially Valery. To one side of everyone, a certain acquaintance appeared that the brunette does not expect to see again. How long? Hi to Issei. Lux-san. Issei almost couldn't believe what he saw. What? How come? Don't be confused, the real me had already disappeared that day as you saw it. Instead, I am an extension of my original self, a result of when you first took the power of the hacker Yuku, and I have been here in the depths of the boosted gear, even if you haven't realized it. And I was the one who helped Drag improve the sacred gear matrix so that you could use the dividing gear again without consequences, as well as the improvements. The extension, or copy, of Lux, smiled when he saw the chestnut expression. I must admit that I have seen everything you have been through since you obtained the power of the dividing gear, and I have been amazed by what you have done and faced before that night. It is obvious that you still have doubts, but you have learned to overcome them with the support of the people around you. Worthy to admire. Somewhat doubtfully, Issei would go to see his predecessors who, incredibly, seemed calm with the presence of Lux's extension. We trust him. He and your beloved's predecessors were the cause that you could change the Juggernaut drive, as well as helping to slowly release Drag's original powers. Elsha said that with great smile, one that surprised the brunette. It seems that we are not the only ones who have changed. That sudden voice. Drag. I'm glad to see that you're still well, partner. It took me to get here, and it's good to see you again, Elsha. Belzerd. We thought the same, Drag. Belzerd smiled when he heard the voice of his former battle companion, as did Elsha and the rest. Hi to Issei. The young man would go to see Lux's extension. You have inspired many, even beings who previously only believed in ruin. Without a doubt, you are more interesting every day. Therefore. Lux's extension would raise his hand. We will break the final seal, and just like that, you will ascend to a new level. You, Valery and the dragons, are the ones who will undoubtedly guide this world into the new era. Ice. Drag. That other sudden voice. Office. Do this chant with us. Issei was almost confused by what he heard, and this is. How ironic. Drag analyzed everything and saw what was going to happen. Good luck to his partner. Current Scarlet Securitate, guide this world towards the future that is behind that beautiful sunset. Elsha said with a smile. Be that infinite dream that carries the unbreakable hope of the world and creates a new possibility. Belzerd said, also smiling. After saying that, Elsha, Belzerd, Lux's extension, and the past Securiutes dissipated into glowing reddish-greenish-yellow particles. And these particles would come together until they formed a small reddish-greenish-yellow flame. Said flame would then approach Issei and seem to enter his chest, where the young man would feel how his entire being began to boil. Issei would close his eyes before it as he let out a single tear, which would evaporate due to the aura of red-green-yellow fire that began to surround him. He still had doubts, even fears. She was still in her being, but He can't let that sink him. And when he opened his eyes, decision, determination and the same flaming reddish-greenish yellow glow were seen in them at the same time that a black color appeared, added to its flaming aura. The red and black seemed to combine and be a flaming aura of both colors, with the green and yellow present in small details. It was time. The scarlet jet celestial dragon god that dwells within me, awaken from your domain. Issei began a very unique chant. Scarlet red celestial dragon that I possess within me, arise from me. Domination Drake joined the chant. The jet black god of infinity office also joined the chant. The glorious red god of dreams and illusions. Look at the forbidden existence we must become, the one that transcends limits. Lilith also joined the chant. And we will dance like a glow within absolute hell in radiant space. At those words, the entire world of pure and infinite darkness around him disappeared. And only a space of scarlet jet color with jade gold details remained. Issei would then see how Drake's physical form appeared in front of him. Both companions and friends, just by looking at each other, nodded in agreement with one thing. And a flash of the same color of that space began to spread more and more. In the real world, in the air. All the gods and transcendental beings were still fighting hard against the Trahexa, throwing everything they had at it. Beings like Tiamat, Izanami, Hades, Ereshkigal, Yun Kimmel and Midgardsormr made attack sets to slow down the regeneration of that beast, but it still seemed unstoppable. Xerxes was sweating cold and panting a little, but he could continue. It seems that he will have to completely untie himself once and for all, and it was at that point that, suddenly, not only Xerxes, but all the gods, transcendental beings, and so on, felt an immense pressure never felt before in the environment. And then, from the ground, a great and enormous bright scarlet jet pillar would rise, going to the top of the sky of the underworld and turning it reddish black. What does that mean? Seeing that, even the Trahexa stopped its attack to witness what would happen. Its curiosity even prevented it from interrupting whatever was happening, but deep down it knew that was it. Everyone's doubts would be clarified when that sound. As if they were glitches. They came from the boosted gear, and the glowing scarlet jet pillar would disappear and take the form of a large glowing orb of that same color. The orb would then begin to dissipate little by little at the same time that the image of the Securitate would be seen before everyone little by little. Everyone couldn't understand what was happening, but they knew and had a feeling that that was Issei. They even wondered what happened to him or how he did to get even more power than before. The flash around Issei began to die and move away from his body. Now the Securitate's new armor could be seen. This one was scarlet red along with jet black. It also had golden details on the legs, arms and also on the chest surrounding the jade green gems. The claws on his feet and hands had golden details at the end of them, and at the lower part of his back, there was the tail of his armor with the tip of it in gold. His wings were the usual light ones, with a bright scarlet jet color and gold jade designs on the edges, but the most notable thing is that there were 4 wings on the young man's back. The helmet's eyes shone with an intense jade flash as a sign that it was ready. The Securitate raised his left arm and showed the boosted gear gem, and it the 2 new symbols were seen. Those that represent nothingness, the void. The beginning and the end. The endless cycle. The dream and the infinite. We are here. Dragon Infinity Dream Drive. The boosted gear said the name of the new form created by the power of the Securitate and the powers of the 2 gods dragons. No one could believe what their eyes were seeing. It was incredible. The young Securitate out of nowhere achieved a new power never seen before. One that emanated a great omnipresence and his presence was not lost on him. They could feel a great pressure emanating from that young man. Issei, seeing himself again in reality, felt a new sensation of power in her body. This was incredible. He had never felt like this before, not even with his previous forms. This form exuded a calm power, empty and controlled but fierce and intimidating at the same time. He looked at the wings on his back as well as his hands to notice the changes in his armor. Ice. Drake's voice brought the young man out of his thoughts to pay attention. We did it. A new power is within our reach. Yes. And we didn't get it alone. Issei would give a calm sigh and look up from him, seeing the beast they had to defeat. The Trahexa also stared into the young man's eyes. The eyes of the 7-headed man seemed to shine upon seeing him. And deep down he knew one thing. A new dragon god had been born. But that, and without making any noise. Issei would disappear from sight almost instantly, as if he had vanished. Many tried to focus on where he was, but the roar of the Trahexa caught their attention. Of all. Seeing as how the apocalyptic beast now had a huge cut on its torso and reddish scarlet flames were present in said wound, Ajuka with his good eye and instincts would see how Issei reappeared again in the place where he was before. with Ascalon at his hand, and the aura of the Dragon Slayer sword was scarlet jet golden. Just like the leaf was wrapped in flames of those combined colors. Even with this, everyone would see the Trahexa who seemed to roar in pain. And more so because the reddish scarlet flames in his wound did not go out at any time, preventing the Trahexa from healing in said wounded place. Those flames showed no sign of going out. Obviously, when they saw it. Those who had the opportunity to meet Drake Gotch himself in life knew what those flames were. Impossible. That's it. Issei couldn't even believe what he saw. Those flames even seemed to want to spread across the beast's body. It's just as you think, Ice. Drake would decide to clarify the young man's doubts. These are my true infernal flames, my first original power. The flames that are feared by the gods, flames that continue to burn even the ashes and can even burn and disintegrate the soul itself. Only Albion was the only one who was immune to these flames. Now I understand why many fear them. Issei saw how the Trahexa seemed to still complain about those flames. Even a being as ridiculous as 666 is not immune to the flames of the red celestial dragon, despite the still big difference in powers. These flames were the ones that God sealed with even more suspicion because of how dangerous they were, but after starting your relationship with Valery Lucifer and Albion and I understood each other, this power was released little by little. Showing small fractions of it, the young man understood what Drake was telling him as he continued to witness the Trahexa complain. These flames can also prevent self-regeneration. And even if the body and soul disappear, they will remain on and will never go out. The only way to turn them off is to absorb them when you finish using them, being able to even restore some of your spent power. I understand. Issei nodded at the explanation. These flames are his only hope besides the seal. Since he doubts that they can kill that beast even with this power, and he doesn't know how long he can keep it up. Anada. The young man would see how Timer would position himself next to her, she being surprised. But at the same time smiling at what he saw. You did it. Not only Drake's power. But Office and Great Reds. It wasn't just me. Issei would take the hand of the dragon deity, who blushed at it. It was not losing hope that helped me. You helped me too. Tiamat smiled at those words, and, are they going to leave me out? At that voice. Everyone would see how Valery in his new form, new armor and new wings descended until he was at the height of his beloved. His eye changed intrigue and impressed everyone. I'm glad you're okay, my red emperor. Heh. I say the same, my white empress. Issei took Valery's hand with his other hand, and in the other he had Tiamat's. That trio of dragons was the most remarkable that no one could take their eyes off of them. And the three stared at the Trahexa. Let's finish this to go home. And so that our babies can see the world. Haha, don't you mind if others join? Serziches would approach that trio of dragons along with Ajuka next to him. The more the better. And I think it's time to untie myself properly. At those words, the Crimson Demon began to emanate the powerful and fearsome demonic aura from him. The demonic aura of destruction emanated from her body, which began to turn red. Then, the entire field where everyone was began to tremble at the power of Serziches. The moment a crimson aura envelops Serziches, the intense aura envelops this entire area. When the shaking stopped, there was an awkward silence. What appeared next to the trio of dragons and the demon of Astaroth? It was the aura of the Hakai no Chikara shaped like a humanoid body. And a large pair of demon wings of set energy appeared on the back of that being. That's. Valery was almost speechless as he saw the change in the demon that descended from Gremory and Bale. The Crimson Super Demon, Ria's Gremory's older brother and the hero of the Civil War, Serzich's Gremory. A monster without a doubt. I'm not exaggerating if I put him even on the level of a celestial dragon. For someone like Albion to say that he must be serious. Even Drake, Tiamat, and Crom Cruich in the distance were almost speechless before what they saw and sensed. Hahaha. That you tell me that feels like a compliment. Almost many of them are scared by Serzich's now sinister voice in that way. Do not be impressed if you, who have had more irregular changes and powers, have created more than one miracle. Serzich's, friend, let's better hurry up once and for all. Ajuka would see how, even being burned by those flames, the Trahexa was willing to continue the battle. I don't think that thing is willing to wait for us. In that case. Raising his hand, Serzich's would create a magic circle the size of him. He left the modification to you and me of the destructive power. It will be a pleasure. Ajuka smiled half defiantly as he received the magic circle wrapped in Hakai no Chikara aura from his friend. With his own small circles and aura he made some equations and calculations. And then. Swallow this, ugly. The circle wrapped in Serzich's Hakai no Chikara would multiply, creating hundreds. No, perhaps even thousands of these in the sky. Ajuka with a few movements of his hands would send said circles towards the Trahexa, and these seemed to be transplanted in, perhaps, his entire body. The brightness of the circles was the signal, and, extinguishing. Ruin. Serzich's closed his fist as he said that, and, Ooh dot oh 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 dot oh 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 oh. The Trihexa would roar enormously and fiercely from its 7 heads, and said roar was heard very far away. And at the same time, the red-black demonic aura of the Hakai no Chikara began to emanate from the Trihexa's entire body. Whose body began to disintegrate like dust to a large extent, and this did not even affect the reddish-scarlet flames on the beast's torso. When the destructive aura dissipated, the Trihexa was seen, whose body was very destroyed. Only one head was left intact, and its feet, hands and wings were almost completely disintegrated. Incredible. Valery almost didn't believe what he saw. Surziches put great power into his attack, and Ajuka only enhanced it to extend it. They are a terrifying duo. I know. Tiamat nodded in agreement, and seeing how the Trihexa would begin to regenerate. He touches me. At those words, the dragon deity would emanate her powerful aura as she raised her hands, and then soon, a huge mass of chaotic primordial water appeared above the Trihexa, and said mass seemed like I could swallow it with effort. Everyone knew that Tiamat used the humidity in the environment and her aura to create such a mass of water. Primordial chaotic wave Tiamat would make her hands downward, and the great mass of chaotic primordial water would fall on top of the Trihexa, beginning to bathe it, but the beast would roar as if in pain as it was engulfed by that avalanche of water, and its body seemed to begin to melt little by little. Tiamat would make some hand movements and create a powerful explosion where the beast was, even preventing its water from splashing anyone. When the smoke dissipated, the Trihexa was seen in a very pitiful state. He still had a head left, but it was badly damaged, and he only had half of his wings left, half of an arm and a leg, just like one arm and a leg were gone. He looked more like a guy of zombie beast huge. By turn, Valery would also raise her powerful light-dark aura, where everyone could feel the balance, harmony, coexistence and equality of both forces made into one. The girl would summon dozens, hundreds. No, more like thousands of grayish wyverns in the sky. All the thousands of wyverns would fly towards the Trihexa and surround it, trapping it in a type of spherical prison made of said wyverns. The wyverns would then emanate a powerful aura and seemed to open their mouths then. Agonic poisonous rain at Valery's shout. All the wyverns would shoot puffs of a whitish liquid with bluish details from their mouths. These puffs of liquid would bathe the entire body of the Trihexa, which began to roar in pain again as smoke came out of its body. And the deep wounds caused by that liquid did not seem like they were going to regenerate. All the gods and other beings recognized said liquid, which emanated the same sensation as the flames of the Securiute. I hope you really enjoy the original venom of the vanishing dragon, Albion. Valery would watch as the Trihexa roared in agony. It prevents self-regeneration, and the curse from it destroys even the soul itself. Heh. That's obvious. Issei would laugh at the irony, and time for the final blow. The gems on the armor would shine in response to his words, and that new command was heard multiple times as the chestnut tree summoned hundreds to thousands of scarlet jet wyverns in the sky. With a mental order, said wyverns flew against the Trihexa as the white wyverns moved away and dissipated. The scarlet jet wyverns would also surround the Trihexa in a type of spherical prison made of these. And then, blazing inferno of scorching flames at Issei's shout. All the wyverns of the Securiute would shoot fierce and enormous reddish scarlet flames from their mouths, beginning to burn the Trihexa's body to ashes. The beast would roar in agony as it raised its aura to its maximum, wanting to appease those flames and poison in his body that made a terrifying combination, but it had little effect. Or maybe nothing. The Trihexa was now in flames that seemed to cover it almost completely, and these were never going to go out. It now seemed like a zombie beast on fire, which was still alive and suffering. If we manage to generate an irreparable ast, that will be when we can apply the seal, and Ajuka noticed how the 3 dragons who surpassed the celestial category seemed to be panting from fatigue, especially Tiamat. The best thing will be to do it quickly. Their powers are still new and they can't use them and stay that way forever. We are aware of it. Ajuka-sama. Issei would gasp a little and then go on to see all the gods and transcendental beings who were still in shock at what they saw, and just before the chestnut tree shouted to encourage everyone. Everyone without exception would feel 3 powerful presences approaching the place. High in the sky of the underworld, in the distance. 3 trails of light. They arrived at the place, and said trails at high speed would attack the Trihexa, passing through its body and avoiding being affected by the flames on the beast. When those 3 bright trails left the Trihexa's body, which roared in even more pain, these would rise even higher in the sky. When the brightness of those three bright trails dissipated, the destroyer god of Hindu mythology, Shiva, was first seen. And next to the strongest god with the body of a child, there were two men. Many recognized the other two, especially Indra and Mahabali. Brahma and Vishnu had also come to help. Hahaha. I see that we have reached the moment of climax. Shiva would laugh like a child and look at his compatriot. It seems that your prediction came true, Brahma. The three new dragon gods have finally awakened. There were only small chances of it happening. The Hindu god of creation, whose appearance is that of a man in his 30s, short black hair and forearms, he seemed relieved that his prediction came true. Without a doubt. This era is interesting. The main Hindu god of creation who created the rest of the gods of his pantheon and his two compatriots, whose appearance is that of a man in his 30s, hair short dark blue and also forearms, he smiled at everything he saw. With this, the real change of the world begins. There is no turning back after this. Ah ha 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 ha. They took too long, don't you think? Surziches laughed at the irony when seeing the three Hindu gods that make up the Trimurti. Heh. But better late than never. Shiva laughed at the irony and carefree, putting a drop on everyone's neck. The most powerful god is undoubtedly carefree. Current security of the infinite dream, hi do Issei. Current legitimate son of great red and office, how about you lead us? The brunette was almost shocked at what was proposed by the strongest god in the world. He would go on to see his two lovers who smiled at him, with Valery taking off his helmet. Then he would go on to see all the gods and beings transcendentals who were waiting for his response. Gods like Odin, Zeus, Ra, Amaterasu, Anu, La, Quetzalcoatl, Ahura Mazda, Inti and every main god leader smiled at him, as if giving him that honor. What trust they are putting in him. Very good. Everyone at his shout, Issei would raise his scarlet jet aura towards him. Let's get this over with so that the world sees the sunrise and sunset of a new future, where tomorrow still opens after all. The future belongs to those who have the courage to fight for it. Every god in the place gave a great and fierce battle cry that was heard throughout the place. According to all the gods and beings, transcendentals raised their auras and powers to their maximum. They are going to make sure that that beast is more dead than alive. All the gods invoked their divine armors that represented his maximum power, and others only unleashed their powers that were crazier. Zeus from a Greek circle would invoke the most powerful divine weapon in his pantheon, the one that ended even with the Titanomachy, the divine sword of Olympus. The blue divine energy from him indicated how very powerful he was, and said energy further strengthened the main Greek god leader. Thor would be enveloped in his divine blue rays as his eyes shone blue. Quetzalcoatl, enveloped in his aura, would undergo a change. Golden feathers would appear on her body, along with some greenish scales, and a pair of scaly wings with feathers appeared on her back. Amaterasu would also undergo a change while being enveloped in her aura. Her black hair would turn the same color as fire, a pair of white wolf ears appeared on her head, and 9 white fox tails appeared on her lower back. Susanoo also changed. By being enveloped in her aura, her black hair turned dark blue, a pair of bull-like horns appeared on her head, and a large black ringer halo appeared on her back. Tsukiyomi also changed as he was enveloped in the aura. Her black hair turned very dark bluish that almost looked black, a pair of blue cat ears appeared on her head, and 9 blue cattails appeared on her lower back. But this, each god was already in total 100% of him. How cow. The aforementioned would see how Georg appeared flying next to him. It seems like it's time to apply the seal, right? Yeah. Just wait for me to give you the signal. Cao would be enveloped by the divine golden aura of the true Longinus, and the halo on his back would shine like never before, as a bluish glow was added to the golden aura of he. As Trihexa could see the state everyone was in. His instincts warned him of the imminent danger. He tried to flee by taking flight in a desperate attempt to prevent everyone from bombarding him, but suddenly, a mysterious force along with a great pressure in the environment would make him stop in place. What is this? For the good of the world. You will perish here, apocalyptic beast. The Greek god of the abyss, Tartarus, he was above the Trihexa. His body of pure darkness and chaotic energy took the form of a huge 100-meter sphere, which had multiple eyes everywhere and controlled gravity to prevent the beast from fleeing. Finish it. At those words, everyone began to charge their most powerful attacks. Surziches and Ajuka would create a joint red-green magic circle with the symbols of their houses in the center, while emanating their powerful auras, and these seemed to synchronize. Tiamat and Crom Cruach would emanate their auras as they took a large breath of air. Issei and Valery would look at each other and nod, and soon, the chest of each one's armor opened, revealing a blue gem and a green gem respectively. They both knew what that was. The final attack of boosted gear and divine dividing. That new command was heard multiple times from both the boosted gear and the divine dividing, where the latter had activated the power of the Sekirute. Amaterasu and I and Ra lined up, and behind them were all the gods of both the sun, fire and light together. Time for a combination never before seen or planned. All the gods of the sun, fire and light respectively, emanated their powerful divine auras as they raised their hands, and then a kind of portal would open in the sky. Where through said portal one could witness the outer space outside of the earth, where it was focused directly on the sun, which was in the center of the planetary system. And the mere brightness of the sun itself increased even more the auras of the sun gods, fire and light respectively. But this, all the gods of the sun, fire and light respectively, they would create a huge golden magic circle, with the symbols and designs of their respective mythologies combined, with the sun symbol in the center. Odin, Ahura Mazda, Anu and Mahabali lined up, and behind them were the rest of the leading gods and others. They all emanated their powerful divine auras as they also raised their hands, creating a huge whitish magic circle with the symbols and designs of their respective mythologies combined. Tsukiyomi and Seshad lined up, and behind them were all the other gods of the moon, night and darkness. They all emanated their powerful dark divine auras as they also raised their hands, and a kind of portal opened in the sky. Where through said portal outer space was witnessed, but more directly, the moon itself. And the mere brightness of the moon itself increased even more the auras of the gods of the moon, night and darkness respectively. With it, all the gods of the moon, the night and the darkness, they would create a huge dark turquoise magic circle, with the symbols and designs of their respective mythologies combined, with the moon symbol in the center. Anubis, Hades, Izanami, Ereshkigal and Yunkima lined up, and behind them were all the other gods of death, hell and other beings related to hell. They all emanated their powerful evil auras as they raised their hands, thus creating a huge black magic circle with reddish details that carried the symbols and designs of their respective mythologies combined, with the symbol of death in the center. The special and almost unique quality of the gods of death, the thing is that in hell his powers are much stronger and almost eternal, reason why they almost never go out to the earthly world of the living, where their powers, although they do not weaken, are not eternal. Or, Susanu, Indra, Tifon and Shenlong lined up, and behind them were all the storm gods. They all emanated their powerful divine auras as they also raised their hands, and they would create a huge magic circle like rainbow color, with the symbols and designs of their respective mythologies combined, with the symbol of the storm in the center. Fenrir would raise his aura to its maximum as he gathered a large amount of energy into his mouth. Not to mention that the brightness of the sun and the moon increased his aura and power to a new and enormous level. Hey, he is the father of the two brother wolves that chase the sun and the moon. It is normal for that to happen. And obviously Hadi and Skoll at his side carried their own attacks in their mouths, receiving an increase in their powers thanks to the sun and the moon respectively. Midgardsormr with his mouth open would charge energy for his most powerful attack outside of his poison. Tianlong would also open his mouth, charging his most powerful attack with pure energy. But Saya would have his fictional creatures charge and concentrate a large amount of power in their mouths, just like he did the same with his magic guns. Tobio would charge and concentrate his darkness and red-black flames into a 5-meter jinn tall that carried said darkness and flames in its mouth. Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu with their auras at their maximum would create a huge magic circle with Hindu designs, preparing to launch their most powerful attack ever used in their lives. Aokao would raise the true Longinus, where the tip of the spear shone darkly and brightly. In addition to receiving the energies of the sun and the moon. With this, the human with his spear would create a golden circle with bluish details, which had the biblical designs and the symbol of Elohim in the center, while it charged and concentrated a lot of energy. Didi 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 didi. But that, Issei and Valery knew it was time. They were all already charged to 100%, so. Now to the cry of the celestial couple. Sunshine, moonshine, raging tempest, divine rage, terrifying death, cosmic trinity, final extinction, infernal flare, DNT Adjai Nong Pao, Longinus Infinity Dream Smasher Longinus Luzbol Lucifer Smasher, and Ost. The various torrents of pure energy were fired mercilessly. The various torrents came from different directions, but all having the same goal. The Trihexa. The apocalyptic imperial beast gave a final roar as it received all those full attacks at the same time, creating a powerful explosion that shook the entire underworld, creating the largest tremors that were felt by the demons in their territory and that seemed to be heard and even felt in each pantheon. Even in the human world, for some reason, the sound of that big explosion was heard, but there was no earthquake. When everything finally became clear, it was seen that almost the entire body of the Trihexa was completely destroyed. It no longer had legs or arms. It seemed to be missing a large part of the right side of its body and a certain part on the left. It only had 2 wings left intact. And its only head was more damaged. And to top it off, the infernal flames of the Securuite were still intact on the Trihexa's body, where they continued to burn it mercilessly and making him still roar in pain. But the Trihexa was still alive despite everything he had received in full. He proved that he was a being at the level of Great Red. Still, it was time. Georg Cao Cao gave the signal to his companion. Roger. Georg was going to do his part when he felt a tap on his shoulder. Seeing that Graphia Lucifuge was next to him and she extended a relic to him. That's it. Use it. For the seal. That was the only thing Graphia said, leaving the relic in the young wizard's hand. Georg with his magical eyes would analyze the relic, being surprised at what he discovered. This is. I see. I don't know how you got it, but this guarantees everything. Georg would then go to see the battered beast again, raise his powerful aura and balance breaker. At those words, a great, vast and enormous amount of purple mist from the lost dimension began to appear, and said mist would go against the Trihexa, beginning to envelop it. The Trihexa's body would be enveloped in the mist of the lost dimension, and in the sky a kind of gap would open in space, where through it the dimensional gap could be visualized. That was the product of all the gods who combined their powers to open said breach, since they already knew the sealing plan thanks to Azazel. Georg would manipulate his lost dimension and move the body of the Trihexa wrapped in its mist towards that gap so that it would enter. Where he would put it halfway, now he touched the last thing. Georg activated the enormous magic circle that had the biblical symbols of forbidden level, and also using the relic that Graphia gave him, he would make a type of pale gold spherical dome surround the body of the Trihexa. Ajuka, upon seeing that, would create his green circle with the biblical symbols of the forbidden level, sending his energy and his own seal against the beast to seal it. But Saya, seeing that, would use his Telos karma, giving the order for the seal to be a success. Although that would be complicated. Since you could see how the Trihexa was still fighting even inside that spherical dome. Still, time for the final touch. Your turn, Haidu Issei. Georg gave the signal to the aforementioned. The young Securuite sighed, calming down, as he felt his heart pounding. In addition to feeling a great pressure on his body. He was on the limit. He must end this now. He raised his joined hands, pointing towards the large magic circle made by Ajuka and Georg. The two of them would apply the seal, and he just had to repower it. So, infinity transfer. The transfer of power was done, and the large magic circle with the forbidden level biblical symbols became even larger, beginning to emanate even more energy. Even with this, Issei could feel his energies descending and his muscles beginning to ache. But he still had to continue, even if he must endure great pain and abuse on his body. He will do it. It was in that he felt how more energy was present in his being as he continued with the energy transfer. He turned to see what it was and was surprised to see that Valery and Tiamat were sending him power. Did you think we wouldn't be left doing nothing? Ice, like your women. We have the duty to support you. Valery and Tiamat seemed tired, they were giving him all they had left of energy so that he could continue with the transfer. It was at that point that the brunette felt even more external energy joining him, and they are not the only ones. Serziches had his hand raised, also giving all of his power to the Securuite. And he wasn't the only one. All the gods and transcendental beings had their hands raised, giving their energies to Issei as he continued with the transfer of power, even though he was surprised by all this. They trust him too much. Okay. I won't let you down. Issei's scarlet jet with jade gold aura would be enlivened by feeling his emotions altogether. Let's end this. At the cry of the Securite, all the gods and transcendental beings continued to transfer their energies towards Issei, who would then transfer said energies to the forbidden magic circle of the seal. More. A little more. See how many of the gods lost their auras, and the fact that they ran out of energy was proof that they were falling in heaps, barely having enough energy left to stay in flight. Amaterasu, Susanoo, Tsukiyomi and Quetzalcoatl lost their transformations after running out of energy. And the same was happening with all the others who lost their auras and final forms. Even Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Indra and Mahabali were panting with tiredness. Almost not being able to believe the great amount of power they were giving to be able to seal the Trihexa, but they were achieving it, they had to continue. Even the gods of death like Anubis, Hades, Izanami, Ereshkigal and others, who had the quality of almost unlimited powers and energies when being in the underworld, panted with regret and felt their energies almost at zero. Prom Kruich would return to his human form after giving all his energy and power, as would Serzichas shortly after. Both panting with regret. Tobio would return to his human form after giving all the energy he could. Even Cao Cao was panting with regret and the halo of his balance breaker would disappear. Valery would even lose his new armor and still have his new pair of wings, along with the divine dividing. Tiamat would lose the traits of Ophus's power in his body as well as one of his two pairs of wings. That he still largely retained the appearance of himself as the dragon deity showed that that was his original form. But he still ran out of energy. Issei continued to receive the energies of the last god standing, which were Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Indra and Mahabali. The energy transfer continued and continued. Soon, Indra and Mahabali were the next to give in. And within a minute Brahma and Vishnu followed them. Only Shiva remained, giving the last of his energy to Issei, who continued with the transfer. Damn. How strong was the biblical god really to have managed to seal the Trihexa in the past? Because this was ridiculous. That event was seen by all the civilians and others of the supernatural world in their respective factions. And the other mortal members of DXD on the ground saw the same thing. Many feared the worst, but several members of every faction and mythology would pretend to pray, which was even rarer for demons, but this, each supernatural being in their respective faction, would begin to emanate a type of aura, which would go towards the sky. And in that field, each main member and soldier of DXD did the same, beginning to give his own energies to the young Securite. Issei panted more regretfully at what he did. The power he received and transferred was one thing, but the concentration on the transfer was more tiring. He couldn't unfocus. It was in that the brunette felt like more energy was going to his being. This was. He didn't know how. But he could feel and sense that they were the energies not only of his friends, loved ones and companions, but also from every civilian of every supernatural faction. The energy that went towards the Securite came from the sky, and this fueled his scarlet jet aura more and more. The transfer continued. They could do it. They had to. You can. Ice. Those voices in his head. Ophus and Lilith gave him their support from where they were. And, you can. Friend. Another voice in his head. Masculine. He had already heard it before. Great Red. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we are here. Issei's eyes shone red-black at his determination, ready to work for our own destiny. We are the light of hope that flies into the future. Full infinity transfer. That command was the last and the definitive one. Shiva almost collapsed after giving up all his energy. Issei transferred the last of the energies that all the factions gave him, and then, even with his hands raised and joined together, the Securite would create a large red-black magic circle with the symbols of dream and infinity combined. Said circle of the young man would then join the forbidden biblical circle made by Ajuka and Georg, creating a new one that was a combination of the two that make it up. But this, said new circle would go against the Trihexa and would become shiny particles that joined the spherical dome that contained the beast. And within seconds, a prominent symbol appeared on said spherical dome. The symbol of infinity. A totally unique new seal had been applied. That was. Now at Georg's shout, he along with Ajuka and Issei would give the last of their energy and push the beast towards the dimensional gap. And before it entered completely, Cao Cao would see how the true Longinus would shine one last time. That was. I understand. He would raise the true Longinus and, O dead God, whose will remains in the spear which pierced the Son of God, absorb the ambition of the King of domination and supremacy that sleeps within me and cross the gap of blessing and destruction. Announce your will and become a radiance. Shine of supremacy. After the chant of Cao Cao, the light of the true Longinus illuminated the entire place, and said light would envelop the spherical dome with the symbol of infinity where the Trihexa was. The last miracle of God. The blessing of the new tomorrow. But that great spherical dome with the symbol of infinity that was now surrounded by the divine aura of the true Longinus would pass through the gap in space. And after crossing it completely, the gap would close, never to open again. Silence reigned in the place and in all the factions, due to the tension of knowing if they had achieved it. Issei, panting with regret, would go to see Cao Cao, who after feeling a last warning pulse from his spear, nodded at the brunette with a smile. That means that. Excited in his inside and with his body seriously shaking from the pain and pressure, Issei would raise his hand upward as best he could. And with effort he would close it into a fist. That was. Victory as Issei. The cry and news of the young Securite was heard to the four winds. Everyone had heard it. That. Then. You. All the gods and transcendental beings screamed with excitement and joy after knowing that they had won. They did it, they had triumphed. The same cry of joy and excitement could be heard from below with the other members and soldiers of DXD. And the same thing happened with all the supernatural factions and mythologies. After announcing him and lowering his surrendered arm, Issei's new armor would dissipate, leaving only the boosted gear. The brunette would simply and smiling, let himself fall when he saw that they had triumphed, but someone would stop his fall. Valery took his loved in his arms and hugged him, happy while crying with emotion. Hoping this is not a dream. You did it, Ice. You did it. Said Valery. Thank you. But I didn't do it alone. Issei smiled weakly as he tried hard not to close his eyes. We all achieved it. It is our victory. Yawn. I don't know about your partner, but I'm dying of sleep. I think I'll sleep for a few days. I say the same thing. I feel tired and sleepy. And the two of us don't fight physically, but we do fight spiritually. Yes. Me the same. Issei would close his eyes to finally sleep after such an arduous battle, while Drake and Albion snored for a moment until he could no longer hear them. Valery laughed at the irony at that while still tenderly hugging his beloved. His new pair of wings wrapped around the brunette as if to wrap him up and give him more comfort, while the wings of the divine dividing kept the air of Lucifer still in flight. Finally this global and almost dimensional crisis had ended. DXD had defeated Klepeth completely and forever. But what no one knew is that this event will be marked in history. Maybe it will bring some consequences in that, but there is no doubt that this was the battle for the world that made will be formed. The Great Supernatural World Alliance. In the dimensional gap. The most powerful existence in the entire universe, the Red Dream Dragon God and the Securite, Great Red. I would see something unusual, but still almost expected in that dimensional space. The spherical dome with the symbol of infinity, which is the seal where the Trahexa was. Seeing this, Great Red knew that now it was impossible for that beast to escape. The nothingness and void of the dimensional gap had a large amount of unlimited energy that made time pass differently from that of the earthly world. Just as it strengthened the infinite seal. So I knew that it is a guarantee that that seal would last forever, and even more so because of the terrible state in which the Trahexa was left, added to the infernal flames of the Securite and the lethal poison of the Hakuryuku, which will remain eternally present in the beast until it consumes it and will never allow it to recover. Great Red would stare into nothingness with his eyes shining for a moment. He knew one thing. A great battle had ended and many more things were coming, but something else. Something still larger and more powerful is approaching. In a few years. A threat even worse than Trahexa. And he truly hopes that his, now, born son and heir to his power, is ready for the greatest challenge of all. Which will come in a few years. For now he will let him rest, he deserves it. Chapter 55 New Dawn and Sunset. The entire human world was in a little hustle and bustle. News and reports of a huge nuclear explosion being heard, added to the fact that before that the sound of something similar to a beast roaring from the four winds was heard, they were on TV and on the different information networks. Events that occurred a little over an hour ago. The news revealed how the world leaders of each country in the world stated that they had no knowledge of it and that they were not involved. Some interpreted that great roar and explosion as furious thunder, since all morning of that day, it was cloudy with no signs of rain. So the matter was forgotten almost instantly, but this event would still be marked in the news and on the networks of unusual events. With others interpreting that they thought that that same day it was the end of the world for some reason. It was already midday, and the sun was shining normally or even more than before. Its appearance after the black clouds had cleared was like seeing the dawn of a new day, one that almost didn't see tomorrow. But right now, at the Haidu residence, Valery, daughter Elizabeth almost cried with joy and anger when she saw her daughter enter the house through the main door, accompanied by the rest of the inhabitants of the residence, including Azazel himself. Oh, thanks to the heavens that came back, the woman hugged her daughter, without giving her the opportunity to say anything, while the latter just reassigned herself and decided to enjoy the moment. Oh, for the Buddha. My baby. Mickey watched almost with horror as her son was carried in Azazel's arms. The brunette was not physically injured, but he was still unconscious. What happened? A lot, miss, a lot. Azazel would sigh complicatedly at all this. Let's let him rest in his room, he needs it. The waste of his energy is more tiring than physical wounds. Receiving a somewhat complicated nod from both fathers, the fallen one began to climb the stairs towards the chestnut tree's room, being followed by both parents who wanted to be with his son until he wakes up. Already at the door of the chestnut tree's room, both parents opened the door for Azazel to enter, and he left the unconscious Issei in her bed. Mickey approached her son and checked her pulse, relieved that he was still breathing and stable. "What a relief," said Mickey. "They have returned." The three adults would turn to see the origin of that voice, seeing that it was Office who entered the room, being accompanied by Lilith. Glad to hear it. When I felt that the presence of the Trahixa was no longer in the underworld, I imagined the result. "Office, it's good to see that you're okay, and how are you, Lilith-chan?" Azazel asked, somewhat intrigued by how Office's copy was. "Lilith will be fine. Lilith wants to see Ice's condition." She spoke normally and without seeming affected by what they did to her. Having said that and without asking permission, both Ouroboros sisters approached the edge of the bed, staring at the unconscious Issei, who was sleeping peacefully and with a calm smile. Both Ouroboros extended their hands and let their black auras envelop Issei's body as they both closed their eyes. And after almost a minute, both opened their eyes and stopped emitting their black auras on Issei. "Ice will be fine." The healing factor on my part helped him no longer have any physical pain or anything broken, but the waste of infinite energy is too much. Give him a few days and he will be fine. The fallen sighed in relief at what Office said, while both fathers did not understand much. But seeing Azazel's relief, they understood that this was good. We gave her a quick and simple treatment, but nothing complex that would prevent her body from suffering consequences from the power I use, added to the updates to my power that Lilith and I have been doing to her until now. Her power will not be affected. I understand. Azazel would shrug his shoulders as he got rid of the worry. He even internally admits that he would have liked to see for a moment the new armor that Issei obtained as well as Valery's, since this was something unique. But for now. How much do you know about this hidden side of your son's life? Azazel asked a question looking at both of the young man's parents. Well. Not much to say. Goro would scratch the back of his neck. Something complicated. What that guy, who I think was Valery-chan's father, told us was somewhat disconcerting. But we hardly paid attention because of the torture they did to our son and Valery-chan, using us as hostages. I understand. Azazel would sigh complicatedly. The state his son is in is also partly my fault. Both parents would look curious at the fallen who spoke without looking away. For a long time, I became too obsessed with his abnormal growth. As sensei, I believed I had the power to save everyone, but even I was afraid deep in my heart. I demanded too much of him in such a short time that when I saw that he reached such limits, I was afraid to see him die alone because he wanted to meet my expectations and those of everyone due to the situation we were in. Don't say that, Azazel-sensei. Goro waved his hand somewhat complicatedly. And please don't hang your head. Our son is now in good condition, and that is more than enough. Goro would smile sincerely. Azazel-sensei, we don't understand much of what happened today, but we do understand that it must have been something very important. And as a father, I am happy to have seen our son grow in many aspects until he became in one man. When I find out about the physical condition that our son had, well. Mickey would also smile with sincerity and irony. I was too surprised to see his muscles. That just means that all this time you've been taking care of him. As a mother, I don't want him to be involved in dangerous things. However, I can see how my son is growing wonderfully. After all, you saved him. Like my husband, I am also proud. Mickey would give a slight grateful bow. I am grateful for everything she has done for our son. Azazel would scratch the back of his neck complicatedly and would put on a half smile. Thanks, though. I wasn't the only one responsible for him growing and changing like never before. Valery and the rest are more responsible for it than me. I was just a simple instructor, tutor and teacher. Azazel would look at the brunette on the bed. His son became someone very important to everyone around him. He has done a lot and received very little because of personal problems. But at the end of the day, he is someone very important to all of us. Both Haidu parents just smiled at what they heard as they went to see his son still sleeping with a calm smile. There is a lot they should know. Meanwhile, with the others in the main room of the residence. Mother. Valery continued to be hugged by her mother, who cried while she caressed her hair. I'm fine. It's nothing. Valery internally enjoyed the moment. For years she missed a hug from her mother. Just to make sure. Do you really remember everything? Yeah. You already know that, yes. Elizabeth would separate a little to see her daughter in her eyes. That reminds me. Without letting her react, the woman began to pinch and pull her little girl's cheeks. You're in trouble. Young lady, how can you think of erasing my memory and keeping me out of your life? Sheen though. Valery spoke as best she could and she was barely understood. This was her mother without a doubt. That's not enough. Elizabeth was undoubtedly angry and everyone else decided not to approach, they wanted to be safe. It's time to set a limit for yourself, young lady. Poor Valery-san. Asia didn't know if she felt sorry or funny, so the silver-haired girl turned pale. The scolding seemed more like a playful yet serious one. Well, I say she deserves it. A little. Tiamat looked with some grace and understanding at what was happening between mother and daughter. Not to mention that she was in her ordinary human form, since her original deity dragon form would draw a lot of attention from her. By the way, what are we going to do with the two of them? Everyone would go to see where Zenobia was looking. Seeing that Balbrith and Varine were present in the place, with both of them looking curiously at the interaction between Valery and his mother. As they promised that they would only listen to Valery-san and that they would not cause problems, we will discuss it later. Ria sighed, complicated and tired from everything that had happened. And everyone still remembers what happened shortly after the battle against Trahixa ended. Flashback, the battle against the Trahixa had apparently ended. The floating city of Agrees looked somewhat destroyed but still stable for the most part, and the place where everyone fought had traces of the great battle that broke out. The four main leaders of Klepeth were already dead. With it, also an attempt by a demon who got fed up with the world and tried to force it to improve or perish in his place. From where the mortal forces on land fought against Klepeth's minions, all the members and soldiers of DXD looked at the sky of the underworld calm and relieved with mixed feelings. Joy to see that they had managed to avoid the end of the world and that it could still continue on its path. Whatever it may be. When everyone saw how the gods and transcendental beings who fought against the Trahixa descended from the sky, many received them with applause and ovations. Which made some gods feel strange, being received as heroes is not something they expected. Although obviously, the credit went to a certain unconscious young man. The arrival of Valery with her new and only pair of wings puzzled and surprised many, but they focused more on the fact that she was carrying Issei in her arms and had him wrapped with her new wings. Many felt jealous when they saw that, but they let them pass. It was obvious that Issei was comfortable where he was. Issei opened his eyes for a few seconds. He noticed that they were safe. Finally, he wanted a rest. He closed his eyes and then fell asleep before the nervous laughter of those present. Obviously shortly after, the true Longinus gave a pulse that caught the attention of Cao Cao, as well as many who heard said pulse. And within seconds, Valery felt a similar pulse and remembered what he had saved, so from a magic circle he took out the remaining Saint Grail, to the surprise and relief of everyone, but more so than Gasper. With that, the true Longinus emanated its golden blue divine aura, and the Saint Grail began to emit a similar silver-colored aura. Both sacred auras from both relics shone brightly that seemed to envelop the entire field where they were. And when the glow dissipated, soon everyone heard the somewhat loud screams of many, and they were even more surprised to see that all those who had died fighting the Trahixa had revived, just like the mortals who fought against Klepeth's minions. The true Longinus and the Saint Grail stopped shining after achieving their goal, and within seconds the chalice flew from Valery's hands and headed towards its owner. Valery Teeps caught the chalice in her hands and it, shining, entered in his chest. Where the vampire felt better than she did before. She had taken back what was taken from her. The surprise at such an event was still present. Many went to see Azazel, whose look indicated that he did not understand what happened to him either. Although Gabriel sensed it as a blessing from his father's will, and all of his brothers were tempted to accept that, but they did not know if it was like that or not. Thanks to a warning from his spear, Cao Cao would see how a certain pair of individuals approached them without hostile intentions. So you already made a decision together with him, right? Varine nodded at what the human said while Balbrith remained silent, but without being hostile. Many looked curiously at that pair of unknown demons, but. We have to talk about this. Valery, has Razavim revealed anything about all this? The descendant of Luzbel Lucifer nodded to the human's question. Many already assumed that it happened, but it doesn't hurt to hear a little more. After taking the wounded and tired youth along with the soldiers and others to Ryudameru where they would receive medical treatment, Serafal suggested that they take Ryudameru to Agrees so that all the leaders could gather there more comfortably, which everyone accepted. Already in one of the largest rooms in all of Agrees, which was luckily intact, all those in high command, or the adults to put it another way, gathered. There were Serziches, Serafal, Ajuka, Falbium, Tannen, Lucifuge and their compatriots from the demons, in addition to Kusha who was an informant. At the request of Sererg, Azazel, Shemazai, Barakiel and Penemu on the side of the fallen along with Valery and Messiah, plus Balbrith and Varine, were behind both of them. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Metatron, Vasco and Edward on the side of the angels. Isaac, Shaltier, Gaius, Elemenhald and Malarca on the side of the vampires. Odin, Freyr, Thor, Vidar, Frigg, the leader of the Dark Elves, and the leader of the Elves of Light on the side of the Norse. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena, Apollon, Selene, Hermes and Artemis on the side of the Greeks. Izanami, Amaterasu, Susanoo, Tsukiyomi, Yasaka, Suzaku, Aoryu, Seryu, Genbu and Byako on the Shinto side. Ra, Anubis and Horus on the side of the Egyptians. Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Sun Wukong, Zhu Beiji, Sha Wujing and Cao Cao on the side of the Hindus. Nuwa, Fuxi, the Jade Emperor Augustus of Jade and Nezha along with the 4 celestial kings as escorts on behalf of the Chinese. La, Taranis, Sucelis, Didama, Epona, Dagda and Krom Kruich as escorts on behalf of the Celts. Huitzalcoatl, Huitzilopochtli, Tlaloc, Tanadia, Tezcatlipoca and Metzli from the Aztecs. Ahura Mazda, Zervan, Vayu, Atar, Rashnu and Varksada from the Persians. Inti, Viracocha, Kilya, Ilyapa, Pacha, Vichama and Parayakaka from the Incas. Itsamna, Yun Kimmel, Zaymanek, Kinichahau, Ixchel, Chak, Kal, Hurakan, Tapu and Sakol from the Mayans. And finally, Anu, Ishtar, Ereshkigal, Antu, Nannar, Nusku, Udu and Tiamat as escort on behalf of the Babylonians. All the leaders of each supernatural faction or mythology were present, which made some people nervous, especially those on the biblical side. A meeting like this after a great battle certainly looks very important, so they must treat everything in moderation. Valery then began to tell everything that Razavam told him and what he did. What happened to Apophis and Dahaka because of Rizavam, the death of Rizavam himself at the hands of Razavam to awaken the Trahixa and Razavam's plan so that the world is forced to evolve to live or perish and then create a better one with him as its leader. The battle and how Qliphoth managed to harness the power of Apophis and Dahaka and artificial sacred gears that were too perfect. How Cow even added that the 2 unknown demons in the place, Balbrith and Varine, were artificial demons with the power of a super demon, and Kusha supported this by telling what the deceased Gressel told them about Qliphoth using the original Lilith to create thousands of artificial demons, and only 4 of them were born with monstrous power, but Balbrith and Varine being the only transcendental ones. Valery would even tell everyone what Razavam told him about the true story of the original Mao Lucifer and the duty that Elohim gave him about being the enemy of humanity to unite them and stop their wars. And at the end he told about his last fight against Razavam when he unexpectedly kidnapped her, the support of her predecessors and Aphis and Lilith for her new armor, the new shape of Razavam's sword, and how she defeated him with a direct stab, with Razavam leaving with a smile, regretting what he has done, and wishing them luck in succeeding. Plus she showed off her new and unique pair of wings to give more belief to what she explained. It seems crazy. Seraphil was in disbelief and she almost couldn't believe everything she had heard. Especially the part about Lucifer himself. Many were the same. It's kind of hard to believe. I can confirm that fact. The first minister of the underworld and most trusted right-hand man of Lucifer himself made himself known to everyone. Greetings to all, for those who do not know me and find it difficult to believe. I am Lucifuge, the original and right-hand man of Lucifer Sama. The words of the ancient demon left everyone in the room speechless and shocked, although Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu saw everything calmly and smiled somewhat amused, as if already imagining how this would turn out. But this, the original demon Lucifuge began to tell everything that had happened in the past since he was created by Lucifer based on Lilith. How Lucifer himself accepted that his own people would be the necessary sacrifice, all in order to keep them united. To humanity for a common enemy. He, like Leviathan, Beelzebub and Asmodeus, made a trick that caused the great biblical war by not wanting to accept their destiny as the predestined and always losers in the battle of good and evil. And how Lucifer left only his 6 right hands in charge of the underworld and that they adopted another identity, these 6 being the only original demons of the ancient era still present today. Michael sighed reluctantly and defeated at everything he heard, as did his brothers. Even Azazel and his compatriots were the same. The truth had already been revealed. Joe, from his reactions I assume that you already knew about that, right? Odin smiled a little amused, and none of the angel and fallen leaders denied it. I imagined. Although of course, that at the same time explains many things. I already said in the past why that brat of Elohim never killed Lucifer, because he was part of a larger plan, one that led to the biblicals being known and commemorated as the only true religion by humanity. This only reinforces the saying that mythologies and religion do not paint the gods and their stories as they really are. Izanami laughed at the irony of everything he had heard. There is always a hidden and unknown story behind these, and this proves it. Nothing is what it seems. That light and darkness kill each other and that one is superior to the other is wrong. I agree. Dezu. Quetzalcoatl nodded at what he heard with a somewhat sing-song tone. That is a concept that was created by us, the gods, to give humanity a reason to fight against evil beings that come from hell, the night and the darkness. Even so, what was that trick that caused the biblical war? Ixchel's question was valid and one that many asked. A sudden attack on our territory and our followers. Michael would speak with some nostalgia and a somewhat somber tone due to the memory. The mass Leviathan, Beelzebub and Asmodeus somehow managed to send a large group of demons and demonic beasts to attack heaven, our home, where it was discovered that they entered from the third heaven. Similar to the attack on heaven recently. Cao would speak, frowning somewhat. Those three mass somehow discovered that entrance to purgatory that is connected to the Greek underworld. In fact, I am not exaggerating with this possibility if Hades. Athena would take the word, and neither her father nor her peers refuted her words. Maybe he helped them, waiting for the outcome of that war. I wouldn't be surprised if he expected Elohim and his side to win and eliminate all the demons and fallen at once, when humanity itself had not achieved it in several millennia for playing their predestined battles and temporary peace. Knowing the hatred he has for those races, I wouldn't be surprised. Artemis gave her opinion in a carefree and unimportant manner. The old man is crazier than before. Not to mention that those masks caused a temptation to our followers back then. Raphael would take the floor, being somewhat serious when remembering those days. From what we discovered, the original Asmodeus used a special mist imbued with the power of lust. Like the gluttony of Beelzebub and the envy of Leviathan, added to the greed of the demon Mammon and the wrath of the demon Ammon. That frog imbued with the power of those 5 original sins made our believers go crazy, bringing out their darkest desires and longings, causing a fight between them. Those 2 incidents were what caused the war, and even more so when we blindly believed that Luzbel. No Lucifer. He had allowed himself to be completely corrupted by evil, and that he broke the oath he made. We fell into the game of those 3 mass, and the war was inevitable until it ended. When Lucifer Sama found out what happened, it was too late. We find out what happened shortly after the war began, since Lucifer Sama found all this strange when his compatriots informed him that God and humanity have declared war on him ahead of time, and even more so because the angels and their God were going to participate, something that had never happened before. Lucifuge spoke nostalgically and in a somewhat somber manner, remembering how it all went. Lucifer Sama fought in the war, prioritizing the lives of his people over victory, and when the day came that the war ended, Lucifer Sama and Elohim fought in a very secluded place. We don't know what happened, we only know that there was a silver flash that illuminated everything, and when it disappeared, we all realized that they both died. Oh well, that's how it all ended. Ahura Mazda, who took on a more human form, that of a man of about 30 years old with grey hair, shrugged his shoulders at what he heard. I, for one, cannot blame Lucifer's grandson for what I am trying to do. The world, while moving forward as normal, has only gotten worse since that Elohim brat died. Without his presence, the angels had no choice but to accept everything their followers did in exchange for their faith, because they had no choice. Hence, the real change in the world begins with us. Nuwa would now take the floor. In this situation we understood a lot. Although for my part we were not affected by the loss of believers, despite the fact that China banned Christianity, I admit that we have not done anything for our humans either, causing people like Cao, who was born in our pantheon, to go down a bad path without having a good guide. I apologize for all the problems that I and my team have caused. Cao apologized, lowering his head. The point. Tiamat would now take the floor, being next to Anu. The world must change for the better to prevent incidents similar to this from happening again. Maybe in the past many of us believed that oppression and power were everything, and look what the consequences of that were. A new religion with only one God was born, and it became the most praised and loved by humanity in almost a century of existence. It was easier for humanity to worship one God rather than several of a single religion. Especially knowing the ancient ideals of each mythological faction in the past, the Nordics for being people who lived only to fight and considered death an honor, in addition to being greedy and did not value their own lives. The Greeks for being lustful and the origin of adultery, incestuousness and infidelity. The Mayans, Incas and Aztecs who sometimes performed rituals of sacrificing people to their gods to calm their anger, etc. If those are not reasons why their followers left them, then I don't know what they are. Many of the gods remained silent and did not refute what the dragon deity said, since it was true. Where the main god leaders understood and accepted that. Because of how greedy they were in the past, humanity did not hesitate to forget them when they learned of the biblical teachings and that peace and equality were possible. That is why Elohim became so beloved by humans, because he represented what many in humanity wanted, peace and understanding, not wars. Furthermore, it was easier to worship one god rather than several. I for one, wouldn't mind forming an alliance with the biblicals and those who support them. Lu gave his sincere opinion, surprising his compatriots almost to the extreme. My faction has not been so overshadowed by the biblicals either, and we have long since not depended on our believers as before. Since, for my part, I am not interested in war or conflict, and I have learned to value my current lifestyle. Therefore I give my support and vote to the alliance. I say the same. Nuwa spoke normally and with a sincere half-smile. I support this alliance, and more because it seems interesting. My side has long wanted to engage in talks with the Alliance to have a relationship of peace and harmony. I'm glad to hear that from you, Nuwa-san. Amaterasu smiled upon hearing that, now she and her friend will be able to see each other more often. Let's meet one of these days. The Chinese goddess of creation nodded at her words. I have no problems with the Alliance, Dezu. So I give my vote to start talks about said peace. Quetzalcoatl, in a carefree manner, raised his feet on the table while he leaned back in his seat, and no one objected to him, as if already knowing the way of be his. Of course, I wish that the owner of Drake is included in these talks, since I want to talk to him a little. He is an old friend and rival after all, Dezu. Heh. I think Ice wouldn't refuse if asked. Tiamat laughed a little at the irony, and then instructed Anu to give his most sincere opinion of what he thinks of this. Well, for our part. We Babylonians also accept the Alliance. Anu would yawn a little, but would continue. At first I didn't pay attention to it, and we thought we would stay calm and isolated, accepting that humanity forgot us and not get involved in the affairs of the world, but a change would be nice, as would socialization between cultures. And who knows, maybe in the future participate in one of those demon raiding games for all races, to kill boredom. Although of course, on my side I am already choosing an heir to replace me. I don't have problems either. I'm wondering the same. Equal. Inti, Ra and Itsamna nodded in agreement. They had no reason to fight for religion, and years ago they changed. Even Shiva with just gestures gave his verdict to join the Alliance. With this, the main mythological factions of the world already agreed to ally and lead their societies on the right path. Ahem. Moving on to another matter and out of simple curiosity. Shaltier raised her hand, making herself noticed. And he would go to see Valery. What is Lucifer's descendant now? Although at first glance it looks like an angel because of its wings, at the same time it is not. And the fact that these have the shape of a bat with silver feathers does not help much, even with the sacred and demonic energies in his being. From what I can tell, she is neither angel nor demon, much less a fallen. But something else, don't you think? The words of the leader of the Carmilla were valid, even the gods were intrigued. And then Nephilim. Gabriel said that out of inertia, and everyone stopped by to see her, making her a little nervous about being the center of attention. See, I think that would be the appropriate term to describe it. You see, in the past, before the Great War, there were very few fights between angels and demons, when our believers would summon an angel of a certain rank and beg him to eliminate said demons. Due to those interactions, there were different relationships between angels and demons that were not of enmity or hatred, resulting in those few having relationships with each other, and they conceived hybrids of demon and angel. These were called Nephilims since some were born with wings similar to hers. The seraphim pointed out Valery's wings to get his point across. Others who were not born with said wings still received that name and had great control with pure light and demonic energy together. The first irregularities and union of light and darkness never before told. And didn't the angels fall for hex with a demon, for example? Cao Cao's question was valid for many, but haven't you hated talking about the saying, even angels have evil? Izanami answered that question with another, drawing attention. I previously believed that the purest beings in the world were the angels and children, but from the angels the demons were born and the children were stained by the sins and evil of the world itself. So it would not be a surprise if some angels allowed themselves to be tempted, but not to the point of falling, but accepting said temptation, but controlling it. Perhaps even the fact that Elohim lived back then reinforced this even more, since nowadays it is impossible for angels to mate even with humans without falling, even if they manage to control themselves. I agree. Raphael nodded in affirmation and not being offended. Although that girl's case is still rare. It is confirmed that she is half human, so why does she have those wings? Many became thoughtful about what they heard, but Valery also thought about it while he had his hand on his chest, and after more or less having an answer. I think it's because I accept what I am. Everyone would go to see the, now, Nephilim, incredulous. Before I didn't accept what I was. The only good thing that Lucifer's blood had given me before was being able to properly control the power of Albion, but other than that I only suffered misfortunes. I accepted the power of this, but I did not accept what I am, and I did not accept or understand my own darkness. The girl would create a small sphere of light in her hand and in the other one of darkness. Luzbel was a being of pure light, an angel. But later he became a demonic being, a demon, and became called Lucifer, but he still did not abandon the light. Luzbel Lucifer had the best of both races, the cruelty, pride and other sins of the demons, and the kindness and courage of helping others of the angels, valuing even those of the lowest ilk and prioritizing the well-being of their own above all. No, I know if this really happened or not, but I believe that my great-grandfather transcended to a being similar to what I am now. He did not abandon either the light or the darkness, but rather understood and accepted them. The angel who became the first demon and who transcended into a new being. A Nephilim. He said that last thing by joining the two spheres in his hands, creating a light-dark sphere. But those words, everyone fell silent. The main leaders of each mythological faction only smiled with sincerity or irony, but accepting that. If that is the only explanation they have, then there is nothing more to. Nephilim, eh? Without a doubt, it suits you. Shemhazai gave his opinion and shrugged his shoulders with a slight smile. If we take into account the new system made by heaven and the different relationships between angels and demons interacting with each other, I have no doubt that in some future, we will see more Nephilims on different sides. I don't doubt that it is like that. Gabriel nodded at what he heard. Well, he was internally happy to see that little by little, they were managing to move towards a change that was better for everyone. Although now I want to rest after all this, and we only left almost at the end. I think that's everyone's request, little Gabriel. Zeus yawned as he said that. Better to get some sleep and try this another day. This battle left me very exhausted, I think I'm too old for this. That's what you always say. Hera rolled her eyes in irony. When it comes to her perversions, her husband has all the energy in the world to even have sex for days. She got used to it a long time ago. But I agree, we better go rest. That said, one by one the local people left until only Ajuka was left, with his 3 friends who stopped by to see him before leaving. Even Lucifuge and his compatriots looked at him in disbelief. I'll stay here to investigate some things to see what I find. Ajuka would look out one of the windows outside. Clippeth used agrees as his base, so perhaps they have left behind something valuable and with more information, so I will investigate together with my servants. Only you are like that with your desire for research, my friend. Serziches laughed at the irony of what he heard. My glutton is insatiable, my friend, keep that in mind. Ajuka would also laugh at the irony and grace. I am the current Beelzebub, so I have to honor that name. The demon of gluttony. If you don't mind. Lucifuge would get the attention of the 4 Yondai Mass. Let Nibiros help you. He also loves this research thing. He even did a lot of research in these 2000 years, so you might be interested in what he discovered. Sounds interesting. Ajuka said. Serziches, Seraphol and Falbium only laughed at the irony at that. Better to leave them to their own devices. At least today, they won and avoided a great world crisis, although with great difficulty, but they triumphed. They cannot waste the blessing of a new tomorrow. Already outside that room where all the senior officers of each faction met, each god leader and his compatriots began to withdraw, going to where their other peers and soldiers were to go to their homes. But right now, Tiamat-sama. The aforementioned would turn around and stare at Anu along with the gods who accompanied him at the meeting. What are his plans for the future, now that he has returned? Nothing really. And I don't plan to take the position of leader that belonged to me either, I'll leave that to you. Almost everyone was shocked at what Tiamat said. Also, don't mistake me as the Tiamat you and the others knew in the past. I am her reincarnation and daughter, where I even inherited her name and memories of her. I am Tiamat, but at the same time I am not the one they knew, I am someone else. So being the daughter and reincarnation of the ancient Tiamat, I would be like your younger sister, Anu. Just like the rest. I only inherited my mother's memories and power, but I am not her. I am my own being, do you understand? Why yes, Tiamat-sama. Anu nodded somewhat complicatedly, but the look of the dragon deity scared her a little. As if indicating that she said something she shouldn't. Edo. Tiamat-san. Better. Tiamat nodded at what she heard and would sigh. Only to then smile. Although of course, she would say that they will soon have a nephew, if they want to meet him or her. Ishtar was the first to react to those words, and the rest were still digesting them. Tiamat-sam. Wani-chan. Do you? The goddess's question was answered when the dragon deity caressed her belly with a smile. And with that, everyone finally got it. Are you? Who? When? I found out just in the early morning of this day. It's barely recent. Tiamat looked a little amused at his reaction. Now, brothers. And the father is Ice, the current Sekirute by the way. Now everyone was in shock at what Tiamat said. And in the seconds. And you came to fight even knowing your condition. Ereshkigal was the first to explode, looking somewhat indignant and worried. What if you had lost the undeveloped fetus due to lethal damage? I can't believe our new little sister is irresponsible. It's true, we must make sure that this baby grows healthy. Ishtar quickly approached the dragon deity and began to caress her belly to analyze it with her aura. It's okay, there is no damage or anything that would cause it to be lost. Tiamat-Onichan, you will stay off the battlefield until your baby is born, and there is no discussion. Now I understand why mother considered you an exaggerator when it came to births. Tiamat had a drop on the back of her neck as the memories of his past life came to her. So you better take what his, now, sister said seriously. But this, everyone knew that many more things were going to happen later. A great battle ended, but now come the internal problems on each side. But that is in the background for the moment. Then flashback. Tiamat remembered what happened a little bitterly. It was a bit of a hassle getting Ishtar and Ereshkigal off her and convincing them that they didn't have to accompany her. Luckily Anu and the rest took both sisters and let the dragon deity go with her friends and family. That's a bit curious. Cao Cao, who was present for some reason, looked curious at how Elizabeth had Valery sitting on the sofa while she scolded her with her finger raised like any mother would do, saying things related to a scolding. And else. At that. He felt a pulse coming from her spear, as if telling him one last thing she must do. Lately the will of Elohim in the true Longinus has been speaking to him more frequently than before, and that intrigues him too much. Obviously, when he knew what he should do he was surprised, and even more so when he knew how to do that. Oh well, a fair reward for those who have made a change. But still, they will owe it. Hey everyone. Cao Cao raised his voice a little, and everyone came to see him, including Valery and Elizabeth. There is one last thing I must do. Hence. Before anyone said anything, the human pointed out his spear and how it began to shine in his golden blue divine aura. Said bright aura would then spread and envelop Valery and Tiamat, where they both began to feel a little strange for some reason. Cao Cao kept his eyes closed while he concentrated as he should, while the will of Elohim did everything possible with that miracle, and that it turned out perfect. Where after almost 2 minutes, the brightness it would calm down and boik, those sudden crying screams. They sounded like babies. When the brightness of the true Longinus completely dissipated and everyone could see clearly, everyone was almost in shock when they noticed 4 sheets in the air that seemed to wrap something each one. Said wrapped sheets would then go towards Valery and Tiamat, 2 for each one. Where when both women and the rest lent more attention, they saw that both Securuate women were carrying in their arms 2 babies each, and they cried a little more before falling asleep. But what happened? Gasper's screams seemed to take everyone out of the shock they were in, and they went to see the person supposedly responsible for this. Well. Cao Cao would sigh, shrugging his shoulders. It's a gift, miracle and blessing from Elohim's will on the spear for saving the world or something. Anyway, congratulations to you two for being mothers, so I leave. Giving a bow, Cao Cao would simply leave the place until he crossed the main door of the house. My babies. Tiamat would look almost in disbelief at the 2 newborn infants in his arms. It's good that he has strengthened both arms to carry them both well, thus avoiding an imbalance. One of the babies in his arms opened its eyes, revealing that they were heterochromatic. The left one was honey yellow with black, and the right one was blue with red. Just seeing that in the aura in the babies was enough to see that they were hers and his. Tiamat cried a little when she saw to both infants, but she controlled herself as best she could. She did not want to give a reason for both infants to cry with her. Valery, for his part, still looked almost in disbelief at the pair of babies in his arms. Both infants opened their eyes, revealing their eyes that were heterochromatic. The left one was honey yellow with black, and the right one was blue with silver. Valery cried a little when she saw them, beginning to feel in her being that maternal feeling that every mother has. Despite everything she went through, and even when he wanted to close himself to the world and his emotions, he receives the greatest of gifts. Elizabeth was still almost in shock when she saw that pair of babies in her daughter's arms. And seeing both infants with their eyes open and seeing the heterochroma of colors in this, I came to a conclusion. I went on to look for a moment where they supposedly took the unconscious Issei, and he understood everything and more because his mother's instinct told her everything. The other girls were still almost in shock at the miracle that had just occurred. Valery and Tiamat had their babies in their arms, and each one received 2 of one, quite a unique great miracle of life. Valery. The aforementioned looked up from her, seeing that her mother, Elizabeth, had a look that demanded explanations. I already imagine a lot of all this, but I want to hear it from you. Elizabeth would put on a fake gentle smile. Could you explain to me in detail the meaning of this? Valery was a little scared when he saw that look from his mother. I hope you don't bother. Good luck, Valery. Albion saw everything that happened after feeling something unusual, only to then go back to sleep while the silver-haired girl cursed him under her breath. Well. Valery sighed defeated as she lay down on the couch, still having both infants in her arms, but her mother helped her with that, taking one of the babies to give her more comfort. Her daughter. With this, Valery began to tell his mother everything that happened in all the years that he was not with her. He told her how he begged Azazel to erase her memory and take her to her home so she could start over. Since she thought that hell went through her. He also briefly recounted her years of training, how everyone in Grigori took a liking to her and wanted to help her, her good sibling relationship with Tobio, Lavinia, Natsum and Kauki. Just like how he met Kuroka, Biku, Arthur and Lefei. What happened last year with the alliance of the biblical factions, the Cows Brigade and all the meetings they had with them, where he joined said group to overthrow him from within and try to find his father and grandfather to kill them. Also how Issei joined her team due to certain private circumstances, as well as how over time she fell in love with him, how Issei died temporarily and was reborn, her confession to him and the relationship that both began to have. And all that until the different encounters they had against Klepeth and what it is currently. Elizabeth was surprised, worried and somewhat upset by what she heard. Surprised by everything her daughter did and by everything she had to go through, worried about the dangers to which she was exposed and somewhat upset at having gone to fight with a pregnancy that she found out about just this morning, in addition to having played with that act that is not a game. What an irresponsible girl she ever had. But the important thing is that, I understand. Elizabeth sighed reluctantly at what she heard, even with one of the babies in her arms, pampering him. Even though you were very irresponsible and all. Elizabeth would smile as she walked by to see the baby in her arms, and, I'm happy for you my little one and this is a great gift. I'll be a grandmother. Oh, I hope I'm not so old now. Is it strange that a grandmother looks so young? Yay, haha. I don't think so. Valery would laugh bitterly with an I'm style drop. I understand. Elizabeth would sigh and, just out of curiosity. She would narrow her eyes, looking very serious. That boy will take responsibility, right? Mom, don't judge Ice without even knowing him. Valery raised her voice a little indignant, but she instantly cuddled her baby in her arms so that she wouldn't cry after hearing some of his soft sobs. He is many things, an idiot, someone kind and fair, somewhat perverted and a womanizer without trying, but he is not someone who takes advantage of a girl just for the sake of it. I even told her the news while we were going to that place to battle and Valery would laugh a little amused when remembering her reaction. Well, he was happy, he cried and got angry, knowing that I told him at a bad time, and he had to reluctantly accept that I went to fight even under those conditions. He can be very overprotective at times. I understand. Elizabeth would smile after hearing what that boy is really like. She is glad that her daughter found a good man, without even trying, who makes her feel happy like never before. I hope he wakes up soon. I want to meet him and thank him for what he has done for you. From now on we are family. Whatever you say. Valery laughed a little at the irony and with some bitterness, but still happy. The others just continued looking at the good atmosphere in the place, thanks to the birth of the children of the two women of the Securite. They all felt that now that everything was over, they could move forward normally with the person they love. But for now they will let those two have their moment, they earned it after all. Several hours later, in the underworld. In the main castle of the city of Lucifer, the home of the original Lucifer himself, in a large room, the four current Yondai Mass looked seriously at those in front of them on the other side of the table. Next to these was Lucifuge himself along with his compatriots, his daughter, Ain, as well as Zekrom Baal, Venelana, Zeoticus, Miss La, Lord and Lady Citri, Lord and Lady Phoenix, Ruval, Lord and Lady Agares, Lord and Lady Astereth, and Lord and Lady Glaciolabolas. In addition to the rest of the followers of the Trumas faction, being the most important and those who handle political affairs best. All of these latter being standing and behind those who were sitting at the large table. In front of these, on the other side of the table, there were all the members, without lack of any, of the Demon Council, along with Lord Baal, his second wife and a few nobles who support them. Most of these were very nervous and even trembling with fear, with Lord Baal seeming the most firm. Those in front of them were entities that surpassed them and their predecessors by far for the most part. Although Lord Baal looked with contempt at his former wife, Miss La, who also looked at him seriously. The demon still remembers how she refuted him when she wanted to prevent Sererg from going to help during the battle that was taking place, and how he hit him very hard in her face until he almost left him unconscious. The bruised spot still hurts a little. Well, I think we agree on one thing. Serziches spoke calmly and then became serious. This has been the biggest blunder this council has ever made. The Crimson Demon's aura was no joke, even though everyone was still drained of energy. You know what happened and almost happened, right? A catastrophe and calamity that would affect the entire world, both natural and supernatural. Serziches Sama, why you must understand that we did that because we did not want to sacrifice resources and soldiers in that phase of the battle, where the enemies revived shortly after being eliminated. Said one of the advisors, sounding slightly highly strung. Nonsense. Serafel almost spit out that word. For some time now he decided to change and be more firm in his work, something he appreciates from Sona. You only say that to hide a very irrefutable truth and weakness that exists in you and all those who follow you. They are pathetically weak, who did not want to lift a finger until the final phase of what happened. Take care of your words, Mau Serafel, or else. Or what? Would you threaten me? Would you kill me? Serafel interrupted that advisor, raising her somewhat weak powerful aura that was still superior to that of these poor devils, since even they gave their energies to create the seal, according to Ain. Well, let me tell you, you can't. His era is over, counselors. Just like ours. What does he mean? One of the nobles who supported the counselors did not sound happy at all with what he heard. What they heard Lucifuge would take the floor, and his advisors and supporters were scared when they saw his malicious and confident smile. After reaching an agreement with your Yondai Mas and Zekrom Kun supporting us, whether you agree or not, we, the royal family, now claim what is rightfully ours. Lucifuge would narrow his eyes. The underworld was forged by Lucifer Sama's royal family, and that is something that will not change, even if he is no longer with us. Believe me when I tell you that if Lucifer Sama was still alive and knew everything that happened in the underworld during the civil war, including the way you ruled it and allowed all those injustices and oppressing the weak, he would have killed you. No doubt. After all, to Lucifer Sama, all those who did not follow his will and principles were replaceable. It's nonsense that the original Mao valued even the weak, even the one who was an angel previously. Another of the nobles spoke with contempt, but, and by what right do you say it? Lucifuge asked that question, even having his calm, confident and malicious smile. You and everyone else are just simple brats who were not around in those times and did not see what the Great War was like or the true nature of Lucifer Sama. Have you not heard of the saying that the stories of the past do not tell the truth? Events of the same as they really should. In the end, there is always another story hidden behind it. And to top it all off, the demon would invoke Zek's demonic circle, which glowed when activated. The circle of oath was made to always know the truth, and it cannot be altered at all, no matter how hard one tries. Lucifer Sama put all areas of truth and lies in the circle, which is impossible to alter. And as the last proof, I and my compatriots, who know what Lucifer Sama was really like and who have been in those times. We are those of the first era, and you are just poor idiots who only lived a lie. Just seeing how Zek's circle was not broken was enough to silence all the members of the council and their followers. No matter how much they denied it, in front of them were the 6 original right hands of Lucifer himself, and even they know that Zek's circle cannot be altered to one's liking. They had tried it before and failed, and that's why they banned it. And just as said before, the man with short black hair and red eyes, a Galierth, would also smile without worries. The underworld was forged by Lucifer Sama's royal family, and that is something that will never change, even when he is no longer among us. So don't you dare say that his way of leading and ruling was the true one. Will of the mass. Maybe Leviathan, Beelzebub and Asmodeus would have accepted his way of doing things, but not Lucifer Sama. No. Lucifer Sama was the supreme authority and the 6 of us were and are the true second in command by right, while those 3 other mass were even below us 6, so they obeyed even us by orders of our founder. Also, the man with short very dark reddish hair and eyes of the same color, Satnachia, would speak. Just as the current Yondai mass are usurpers of our founder's legacy, you are the same. Perhaps in the past during the civil war you accepted those principles and that talent and powerful lineage did not matter only because they did not want to return to the biblical war when Rizavam and his compatriots ruled, especially because of the contempt they had for even the nobles by treating them like trash. And after they triumphed in the civil war and managed to overthrow the royal family, they became arrogant and led everything their way. Maybe you don't want war, but you do want things to be the way you want them to be, that only the high class are in power, and that no one among the commoners should rise up against you and also prove that your belief is false. No. The words of the one who is the commander of Lucifer's armies left those of the council and his followers silent once again. He had practically described them completely verbatim. And just seeing how those among the failed and defective rose up with great powers and continued to prove their belief wrong, made them nervous and worried that now it is the commoners who take control of everything. Obviously they never stooped to training in secret and pretending that they never trained to prove the opposite, their pride prevented them from doing so. Although I would like to officially declare that the Demon Council is dissolved and that the royal family recovers what is rightfully theirs. Lucifuge would speak again, this time looking more cunning and malicious, scaring the councillors and followers of he. For now we will postpone it. His words left everyone almost speechless, except his followers, his daughter and his compatriots. In a month we will announce the news of our return, and we will even leak the details about Zek's circle, as well as the new system of leaders that will be established and other things. Demon Council and your followers, enjoy your moments being the rulers while you can, because in a month, everything is going to change. This is a losing battle for you, so be grateful that I am giving you a window of time to take advantage of. Because when the time comes, they will look so pathetic that it will be fun to watch. I think it is more than obvious to say that. This talk is over. You may leave. The man with short very dark purple hair and reddish eyes, Flurity, gave the last statement. With this, all the demons, except Lucifer's 6 right hands, the Yondai Mass and their relatives, began to retreat. Lord Baal. The aforementioned went to see Miss La who called him, and she was very serious. As Lucifuge Sama said, enjoy your moments with your belief while they last. Because in 1 month, everything you believed in will be destroyed. And don't even try to convince Megadoran to support you, he already decided to support Saraerg and dream of him. For him, you and your new wife are no longer his parents, but accept his dreams. Is she a threat, woman? Lord Bale sharpened his gaze at those words. Rather, it is a warning. Miss Lara turned the look with the same intensity. You will see. Your belief is false and is the true weakness of our society. And soon you will experience it firsthand that you will regret not having valued the son you rejected. DCH. Lord Bale clicked his tongue, irritated and angry, and then left the place. Jew. Sometimes I hate my job. Serzic sighed after seeing how everything turned out. Don't say that, son, everyone has handled it well. Zeodicus would put his hand on his son's shoulder. Although I am still surprised by everything that is happening. I agree with that. Lord Phoenix nodded in agreement and smiled a little. Even so, I admit that it was a little funny to see the council and the idiot Bale so scared and even leaving them with a word in their mouths without the opportunity to refute. I say the same. Lord Aguirre laughed a little under his breath, and he would go to see the First Minister of the Underworld. Lucifer Sama, although we understand his reasons and appreciate what he does. Why? On the one hand, because Lucifer Sama would have wanted it that way without a doubt. Lucifuge interrupted and answered the demon's question. And on the other hand, this is our own will. Lucifer Sama showed us and taught us his way of seeing the world, as well as appreciating life and those who are inferior. Lucifuge would look towards nothingness with a nostalgic smile. In the past, Lucifer Sama used to see how in those ancient human kingdoms, humanity had the same defect as our people today. Human nobles thought they were a big deal and believed that only those of high class should be in power and control, just as only from them should come the most powerful members, and that only commoners were mere servants, lapdogs or meat of cannon, and that these should not rise up against the nobility, just as they should not see a very powerful being or someone who demonstrates that their beliefs are erroneous. Of course, only in human society in those times that was like that, due to the lack of food resources and so on. The man with short, very dark blue hair and red eyes, Sargatanas, would now take the floor. In those times, humans did not have the technological advantages and discoveries of current science that would allow them to better use and distribute resources. The nobles had everything because they did not know how to best use and distribute resources, which is why the human commoners lived in poverty and without being able to even take a daily bath. Pipes for running water did not exist, and supernatural creatures and monsters in the forests, caves, and ocean made hunting for food difficult. Humanity on the side of the nobility simply oppressed the commoners because they did not want to and did not know how to distribute resources as they should. And since in those times fights and war between kingdoms were everyday things, it was normal. The point here is. The man with very dark yellow hair and red eyes, Nibiros, would continue. The nobility on the human side ruled until the end of that era due to lack of resources and because the war between kingdoms and religions prevented them from advancing technologically. But that changed after the biblical war ended and everything related to the supernatural disappeared from the world thanks to the other gods. Humans advanced technologically, that fights over resources ended, forming the world peace that they have today thanks to the advantages discovered by their science. On the other hand, our society does not have problems with resources or anything like that. It is just that since we are ancient beings and more powerful than humans, with even fewer diseases, we value power above all else, and if said power is added to nobility, it creates the imperfection we have now. That's our reason for doing this. We have been preparing for these 2000 years for this moment, and it was all worth it. Lucifuge would speak again, with a slight smile. Although we are ancient demons, we no longer wish to change, we are satisfied with the current world. From now on, it will be the new generation who will lead the world to absolute change, and we will only become simple advisors so that they do not get lost. I agree with that. Ajuka said. Without a doubt, our generation is coming to an end. Or it may have already arrived. Serzic's words could not be refuted since that was true. We became mass because of our monstrous powers, but it doesn't matter how strong one is as an individual. There is a limit to the things one can do. People like Azazel and you, Lucifuge Sama, know this. There are enormous things that are different from the power of an individual and that exists in the current underworld. The power of a group. Ajuka understood what his friend meant and spoke up. Riaz-chan, Sona-chan, Sikvara-chan, Sarairg-kun, and Haidu Ice were born with it. Even if there is a limit to the power of an individual, the power that gathers around him, that of a group, makes the powers and bonds become something more. As a result, they break down boundaries and walls and continue to grow. It even applies to the great-granddaughter of our founder, Valery Lucifer, who is a miracle among miracles and the most powerful hacker Yuku of all. Lucifuge would now speak. She gained comrades and friends who follow her because they believe in her and what she believes. That is also the power of a group. Even Siki-chan was able to attract beings like Office and Great Red, who lent him their power. And more powerful beings have gathered around him and changed, among themselves, Krom Kruich and Cao Cao. Serafal sounded somewhat serious and impressed when describing the brunette. With this, many beings will not be able to ignore it. No one denied Seraphol's words, since they were true. Without a doubt, the dragons have brought the world to the change it deserves and have achieved more than one miracle. Everything has focused solely on them. Falbium's words were also irrefutable, and everyone accepted them, since they were true. By the way, how has Grafia been? Lady Phoenix's question created an awkward silence, and somewhat good, but not entirely. Serzich's had his head down as he remembered how his wife carried her brother's corpse with her at all times and had the most broken expression he ever believed he had. Would see in her. I think the situation affected her the most. I don't blame her. She was forced to kill her own younger brother for the good of the world, and Euclid gave her that which ensured our victory. Still, that doesn't make it any less painful. Lucifuge still remembers how his granddaughter felt when everyone who died was revived thanks to the Saint Grail, but her little brother was not. Give her time. She will already know how to cope with it. Everyone nodded at her words. And talking a little about the new leadership system I have in mind. Everyone began to pay full attention to the Lucifuge demon. It is best that they discuss a little about the new system they will make. Meanwhile, in Asgard, in the main castle and home of the leader of the Norse, the Valaskjif, Odin was sitting on his throne, relaxing and trying to get some sleep. The battle against Trahexa left him very exhausted, as did everyone. It's good that the Saint Grail returned to all the lives that were lost, no one died in vain, and they received a second chance to live until the end of their days. At least everything ended well, and Odin-sama, Odin-sama. The scream and arrival of one of the Valkyries to the place exalted him a little, and even more so when he saw how that Valkyrie seemed pale and somewhat scared. We have a problem. What happened? Asked Odin, trying to stay sane. It would be too much of a coincidence for something big to happen now when they just got out of trouble. It's Loki-sama. Him. The one-eyed old man feared the worst after the Valkyrie made a dramatic pause. Not this one. Loki-sama escaped, my lord. Odin was almost shocked at what he heard. It wasn't possible. He knew they couldn't keep him locked up forever, but right now? What the hell is going on? I'm glad they released me from my confinement. Although it was only a year, it felt like an eternity. Loki was smiling, satisfied and happy to finally be free as he walked through a mountain of snow, and there was a rather strong blizzard. Furthermore, his companions are on his sides. Before it would have been somewhat impossible for me to do it due to the great security and that, but a beautiful woman, with a slender figure with long red and blue hair mixed and wearing a black and white tunic as a tone basic, smiled satisfied when achieving her goal. Thanks to the fact that all the powerful gods went to fight alongside the famous Team DXD against that group called Klupeth, I was able to free you by taking advantage of their absence. Although some help didn't hurt. I am faithful to my husband at the end of the day. A very beautiful woman spoke with brown hair tied in a certain hairstyle, and her eyes were emerald, her face was calm and peaceful, and she was wearing a dress of emerald and silver colors, wearing over it a polar bear coat. Even with what she did, and even after being unfaithful to me, I just can't leave him. Sometimes I wonder why you continue to be with him with suspicion. The woman with blue-red hair laughed a little amused. Oh well, not that I care. At least you live up to your name and title as goddess of fidelity, Sigyn. Stop bothering the poor thing, Hela. Loki gave his own opinion, regardless of the reason why. Remember that thanks to her, you were able to sneak more easily through where they had me locked up and not attract the attention of the soldiers who remained. Anyway. Hela, the youngest among Loki's children, rolled her eyes at what her father said. What will we do now? Because I really don't have any plan, I just wanted to free you and see what we do next. Nothing at the moment. Loki would continue walking calmly, having a cold look. For now we have to focus on gathering strength so that I can take revenge. TCH. I never thought I would come back to this place to ask for help and shelter. Surely those two are going to make fun of me in my face. Well, father won't care if I'm with them or not, and I don't expect anything from mother. She left me because she wanted to. Still, they are all we have left, dear. Sigyn happened to see her husband next to her as they continued walking. Fenrir, Hati, Skoll, and Midgardsormr are loyally allied to Odin and DXD. Whether it's mind control or not, it doesn't matter. The point is, I know. Loki nodded and interrupted his second wife. That doesn't worry me at all. I still have the true most powerful being of all the Nordics on my side, and that is enough and more than enough. We'll see the rest. The three gods continued walking for a while longer until they stopped and looked straight ahead. In front of them were three individuals who seemed to be waiting for them. One of them was a young man with a thin build and a dark appearance. Wild, his body had scratches and wounds on the visible parts of his skin, his hair was pale blue like Loki's and amber eyes with some green. The other individual was a young man, muscular in appearance and with a somewhat kind look, his hair was really short brown, and his eyes were emerald with amber in the background. And the last individual was a wolf dog with black fur that was about 5 meters tall. The god of deception was determined more than ever to return to the game and take revenge, but for now they will regain their strength. since they also reluctantly gave their energy so that DXD could create the seal to seal the Trahexa. Since seeing the world destroyed along with them at the hands of that beast was not something they wanted. The internal conflicts will continue even though a battle for the world itself has just ended. The day where the candidates in the election to be members of the student council had arrived. Many of the candidates were nervous about this day, waiting to be accepted into the student council, especially those who compete to be the next Kaichu and Fuku Kaichu of the council. A few days had already passed, 5 for a change, since the battle against Klepeth and the almost end of the world. The next day, which was Sunday, after that battle, everyone rested to replenish their energy, since they still felt the wear and tear. Magical after creating that infinite seal to seal the Trahexa. But all the inhabitants of the house were somewhat worried about Issei, who was still unconscious and sleeping. According to Office, Issei will be fine in a few days. The drain on his infinite energy was too much, and more so because he had to regulate and transfer the energies of the entire supernatural world for that seal, so the mental and spiritual fatigue even is big. The next 4 days they spent going to school normally, while Valery decided not to go to take care of their children, who sometimes slept with Issei, since his aura made them feel warm. The same applied to Tiamat's 2 children. Obviously all the girls gave their contribution to help take care of the babies of both women, with the pretext of gaining some experience if their time comes, but they still did not neglect their academic duties, whereas Zenovia had to seriously prepare for the speech she would give on election day. Elizabeth even became another member of the Haidu residence, along with Balbrith and Varine, which was accepted by everyone, especially the Haidu parents. There were still plenty of rooms. Needless to say, when both parents of the chestnut tree found out about Valery and Tiamat's pregnancy and the sudden birth of their babies thanks to Cao Cao, they were both shocked and almost fainted with their eyes open. But still both of them celebrated like never before when they found out that they would be grandparents. Even Azazel was shocked when he found out what happened, beginning to adore and hate Issei for having children with very powerful women, and even more so because he gave him the honor of being grandfather. Obviously Tiamat made fun of him that same day by telling him that if he is jealous, he better look for a woman and the matter will be settled, but the fallen simply refused, much to Valery's certain pity and fatigue. His father-in-law and his tricks, oh well. He loves him as he is and that's enough. While Balbrith and Varine, in addition to helping with the house and learning more things about the world, sometimes they acted like Valery's bodyguard and a type of babysitter for the 4 babies in the house. Another of the events of those days was when they were debating what names to give the 4 babies. Where incredibly it was discovered that Valery and Tiamat each got twins, a boy and a girl each. Valery, after thinking about it so much, called the boy, Vali. And I call the girl, Himari. Tiamat called the girl to him, Titania. And I call the child, Abzu, in honor of his mother's deceased husband in her past life. The names were already said, given and done. Obviously in those days the news of the battle against Klepeth and the Trahexa was on all the supernatural channels and in the newspapers. But on the underworld side, the issue of that event was stronger. In the different quiz shows and others, many wondered what Klepeth was really planning and why Team DXD with its main members and several others were there. Hiding where Agrees was located without anyone in the higher command being fully informed or having prepared civilians for a possible evacuation in the worst case scenario. In one program there was even a debate that these situations should not be dealt with by young people, but rather leave that responsibility to adults and leaders. Obviously the news reached them that some leaders went to that meeting, while the main ones like Surzich's, the Crimson Mau, had internal problems with the rest of the high command, who did not want to lift a finger until the worst case scenario. And this reinforced the belief of several that the high command watches more for their necks than for the rest, in addition to the fact that they understood that the most powerful descendant of Lucifer and current hacker Yuku was in that event in the advanced group. Valery he had earned a good reputation in the underworld after his feat in Oros with Arrest, and more because a Lucifer showed approval and acceptance to the Oros Academy made by Sona Citri. On the news side of the natural side of the world, all the residents found out that the entire human world found out about the great roar that the Trahexa gave when it woke up, as well as the immense explosion that was the product of all the attacks of the gods and transcendental beings together against the Trahexa. Obviously they were relieved to know that everyone attributed it to furious thunder due to a meteorological problem, since that same day it was cloudy all morning and it was almost at noon that the black clouds cleared to give way to the sun. So they had a problem already solved and no worries in the future. Anyway, with all that explained. Currently, at Kuo Academy, elections were being held for the members of the student council. After all the teachers and students of the school were gathered in the gym, they would listen to the candidate's final speech before voting. This would be the most crucial moment for Zenovia. As the candidates spoke one after another, eventually, Saji's turn came, who was running to be the Fuku Kaichu of the council and took the stage. Ahem. My reason for applying to be the next Fuku Kaichu of the student council is. Saji started talking about reasonable things through the microphone. Well, those were really realistic things he talked about. As for the students' response. Hey, we're looking forward to the star of the sports club. Although there were some sounds of booing, there was also some laughter, but it was still a speech of general praise. Saji would cough to get attention, having a frown. To summarize, while continuing the policies of the previous Kaichu, he planned to operate the student council in a flexible manner. And those from the sports clubs, especially the boys, even if you don't vote for me, if you don't listen properly to what I say, I will be very upset. After he is elected, please listen to at least 2/3 of what he says. A sound of laughter from the students continued until the end, and Saji's speech concluded. The response from the students was good. That should secure your votes. Next, we will listen to the speeches of the Kaichu candidates of the student council. The academy director began to review his notebook while he spoke. Hanakai Momo-san, if he would do us a favor. Momo stood up from her chair on stage when she was called, and she stood before the microphone. The reason why I am running to be the next Kaichu of the student council is that I have always been following and observing Sona-senpai's model very closely. While continuing the will of the previous Kaichu, at the same time I want to build a new Kuo academy together with all of you. Momo's speech was rational and straight to the point, allowing the students to easily understand her meaning. Momo candidly recounted her thoughts and experiences while she observed Sona closely. And with the attitude and expression in her eyes that the next Kaichu of the student council should have, she clearly and concisely described her new vision for Kuo Academy to the students. It was an interesting speech that made the students feel the Momo's sincerity towards the student council. Many students applauded after the speech, and everyone was calmly listening to her speech. If this continued like this, all the votes would go to Momo. Obviously, the last candidate for said position was still missing. Finally, Zenobia-san, who is also running for Kaichu of the student council. The brunette got up from her seat on the stage after the director's words, and Momo returned to her place. And while the brunette walked towards where the microphone was. Zenobia-chan, you'll be fine. I will still vote for you, Zenobia-san, even if your speech doesn't do well. Mitsuda and Motohama were wrapped in tension like Zenobia's fans. Asia, Irina, and Aika gave their own encouragement with gestures to Zenobia, while remembering how they made her practice her speech with them yesterday, and the content it was perfect. In addition to summarizing its main points. But that said, Zenobia stood in front of the microphone and looked at everyone present in the gym. He pulled out the speech from her and she was about to start, but as soon as she opened her mouth, Zenobia fell into a brief moment of reflection. After that, he put her speech in her pocket, then took a deep breath to calm down and start. Before this moment, I was someone with little knowledge of the world, as I had been educated in a church-affiliated facility. Before coming to this school, I did not have the opportunity to apply the word student to myself. In terms of education in this country, I have almost 10 years' worth of time, not in school, but receiving education in the church. The sudden speech caused the students to be shocked, but even so, Zenobia continued speaking. I am running for Kaichu of the student council because my life in this school was very happy. For the first time since I was born I attended school. Here, I never feel bored. The multiple subjects were good. Connecting with classmates during break was also fun. The occult research club activities were also fun, as were the sports and cultural activities also. The school trip to Kyoto was also great. Everything was very fresh, and I felt joy from the bottom of my heart. Although my way of expressing this is not very good, I think this is the kind of school I like the most. I like it so much that I always ask myself, is it really okay for such an interesting place to exist in the world? Also, I want to give a sincere thank you to all the students at this school who helped me. For taking good care of me even though I was ignorant of school life and many trivial things. Therefore, the reason why I want to run for Kaichu Student Council, it's because of this school. As well as a form of gratitude for being able to attend here with everyone. It could be said that this is a speech that was not entirely said by someone running for Kaichu of the student council, rather, it was simply like someone's personal feelings towards the school. However, all the students were listening attentively. There wasn't a single person who lowered their gaze or even ignored Zenobia. I want to leave something behind in this school. Being the first school I attended since I was born, my first experience of school life and the place that has given me something precious, I want to leave behind proof that I was once here. After becoming the Kaichu of the student council, for this school, for everyone in it, I came to this very naturally. Maybe it's a pretty simple idea, but I will become a Kaichu of the student council with a different style from the previous Kaichu, and it will also feel like there are also many things that are not done. However, if you believe it, then feel free to complain to me about it and vent your dissatisfaction. I will try my best to answer for it if there is any problem. I hope you will be able to trust me. I will definitely try to help them and use my position as Kaichu of the student council to protect everyone in this school last year. This school and its students have given me 10 years' worth of happiness when I was not able to attend school before. Because of this, in the space of my remaining year, I want to do my best to protect this school and the students for which I am grateful. I want to create a Kuo Academy that will be loved by everyone. But this, everyone understood that this was a speech from the heart with all his effort. Seeing Zenobia, who did her best to convey her deep thoughts through the microphone, she made everyone able to understand that those were her true thoughts. Eyes, make this become a happy Kuo Academy. Zenobia would smile widely and sincerely. No, I will do it. So, I would like everyone to please take care of me. An intense wave of applause and cheers erupted, echoing in front of Zenobia, who was bowing. Ooh, Zenobia-chan, that was amazing. How reliable, Zenobia-san. How great, Zenobia-senpai. I'm going to vote for you. The same, a sound of applause resounded different from before. And even when the teachers tried to make them remain silent, the students' enthusiasm did not diminish. Asia, Irina and Aika shed tears as they offered their applause to their friend. Asper, Lefei and Kaneko also gave their applause, while Ravel recorded the moment with a camera until she finished everything to show it to Issei when he wakes up, since it is possible that he will feel a little sorry when he finds out that he missed Zenovia's speech. After the speeches were over, as were the votes, Zenobia was being comforted by her friends while she tried to regain her calm. Even though she spoke from the heart, her nerves were not lacking when speaking in front of a crowd. Zenobia at that call and that voice, the aforementioned saw how Griselda approached her, and she used a handkerchief to wipe away the sentimental tears that she had. Even though I'm not in my 30s, I'm immature, and look how I cry because of your speech. I'm really weak when it comes to tears. Sniff. You, the slashing princess who always raised her sword against anyone, you actually revealed a brilliant smile. That was a wonderful speech. I'm glad you came, Griselda's sister. Without hesitation, Zenobia went to hug her older sister figure to her surprise, but she still hugged him back. With that, the director would announce to everyone that the results of the election would be shown next week and that they could leave for today. After classes ended and before everyone gathered at the Orc Club. Are you sure this is a good idea, Riaz? They are going to discover us. They will if you keep talking, Sona. The Redeed silenced her friend with glasses, who had come to talk to Riaz about something, but somehow ended up here. When I saw that Tsubaki-san called Udo to tell him something in private, I decided to come and see. Well, Tsubaki has been looking for the opportunity and I'm no one to. Keep silent, both of you, will you? Akeno interrupted Sona's words and made the gesture for both friends to remain silent, she being very attentive and excited about this. Because? That is the question. Right now the 3 third-year and future university girls were behind some bushes behind the old building. And right now they were observing something important. Tsubaki with Kiba in the place, with the girl ready to. Is something wrong, Shinra-senpai? The girl tensed up at Kiba's question. And no. I just wanted to talk. Tsubaki cursed, feeling nervous, but. Maybe she won't be able to say this later. Internally she cursed her cowardice. Kiba looked at her worried, something about her is bothering him. You know you can tell me everything, I'm here to listen to you. The black-haired woman smiled at Kiba's words, she knew it was like that. Tsubaki would sigh to calm her nerves as she remembered all the crises they have gone through so far, especially the battle against Trihiksa where she truly feared they would die. Issei's words from that day when the two reconciled during Oros. They also came to his mind and. Better take the risk, no matter what. He knows I'm trying. No. It's strange. I always believed that romantic relationships were only for adults where trust was more stable and true, unlike youthful relationships that I saw and believed were fleeting, because I only saw many young people interested only in an adventure, and that's it, without anything mutual, but. Tsubaki would stare at the blonde with a smile. When I met you and we interacted on certain occasions. Believe me, I saw you as someone ideal, but. After seeing the mutual relationships of others and getting to know you more. I was able to learn from you, your mistakes, your past, your doubts. And even today I see them, but. I think that has made me see the kind of person you are, Kiba. And after the last thing and the words of a good friend. I learned that keeping things to yourself is not good, since the way we are living. Our lives can be extinguished at any second. And I don't want regrets, not at this point. Tsubaki looked determinedly at the blonde, who looked the same. I love you, Kiba-kun, I really do. I know that maybe you're not looking for something serious right now, but. I just wanted to tell you. That's all. Tsubaki kept a firm gaze, although she was sweating a little. Little of the nerves and tried to hide his sadness because he really doesn't expect anything now. Shinra-senp, no. Tsubaki. I think it's fair that I open up to you, since you did it with me. The girl tensed up at Kiba's words. The truth is, I didn't expect an answer. His idea was to say it and leave. Let them remain friends for now, and. I'll be honest. At first I considered you very serious and like no one else interested in that kind of thing. The descendant of the Shinra was hurt by that comment and the viewers were upset. Udo, don't be insensitive and say something more appropriate. I swear I will give you 1,000 spanks if you screw up. Riaz whispered that while Akeno nodded in agreement. Say something smarter pretty boy or you're dead. Sona for some reason felt like drowning the Night Gremory if he makes his queen cry with an ugly rejection. The truth is, I'm glad to see that I was wrong. Maybe on the outside it's just appearance, but as I got to know you better I could see that you are someone who is generous and who thinks about others. You do things because you want to help and not for something in return. Compared to me and how I was before, I am ashamed to admit that I am not the kind of person many people say I am. I am aware of my flaws now more than ever, and I can thank my friends and my mistress for that. The black-haired woman couldn't help but laugh a little at Kiba's words. And lastly, look. I really don't understand these things, it never crossed my mind to have something like this, at least not for now. The black-haired woman looked sad, that was the answer what I expected. But with you I can make the exception. Upon hearing those words, the girl looked at the blonde with surprise. Before Ice-kun told me that I was in Espada, a very impulsive one, and that I needed a sheath. At first I didn't understand it, but now I think so. I don't know about these things, but I think the same about you, Tsubaki. If you're fine with someone like me. Why yes, I am. Tsubaki responded almost immediately and then blushed as she sounded somewhat desperate. I'm not an expert either, but let's both strive together. Kiba extended his hand towards the black-haired girl, who nodded while she held back tears and took the blonde's hand with hers as a sign that she accepts. Let's get along, Shinra Tsubaki. Likewise Kiba Yudo. Tsubaki said. Although this ended with very formal statements. It had the expected result, and yeah, I knew they would end up together. Finally a miracle. The scream of Riaz and Akeno with both of them coming out of the bush made both young people go to see both One-Isamas, who now had frozen smiles on their faces and a large drop of sweat. Well. Congratulations. Said Riaz. Riaz-san. Akeno sent Tsubaki was embarrassed to see two of her friends there, while Kiba was confused as to why his mistress and queen were there. Who else is there? The Redeed and the descendant of the Himejima hesitated to respond. They weren't snitches. Sona-sama, get out of there right now or I swear I'll say what you've been doing every time you accepted Seraphol's call. Sama. No, you swore you'd never say it. Sona came out of hiding and then noticed her blunder. What a shame. Good for you, Tsubaki. Tsubaki would tremble with rage while a whitish aura enveloped her. And after confirming that there was no one else hidden. Run. She gave them the chance to run. Start. Now, every man for himself. Akeno was the first to use strategic retreat followed by Riaz and Sona, with Tsubaki following behind them, ready to instill justice. Kiba watched with a large drop of sweat and a nervous smile as his, now girlfriend, chased her friends, shouting atrocities with the persecuted ones, asking for mercy and even forgiveness, but Tsubaki ignored him and continued with her chase. He can swear he can even see his friends running around in chibi form. Now that he remembers, Issei has experience with two women older than him, and even more so because he now has children. Hence, I better ask for advice. I want this to work between us and not regret it. That said, Kiba went after that quartet since he was already fearing that. Tsubaki, don't attack them with your Naginata, and those wind blades better avoid a murder here. Even with the persecution that occurred, the 4 One-Isamas of the academy laughed and had fun like never before. All this while they asked themselves. What did destiny have in store for them? New enemies, allies. Problems. They didn't know it, but they were sure of one thing. They would face it together with the rest, and no matter how difficult it was, they would overcome everything. No matter what. That was the path they had decided to follow. In a place where there was nothing but infinite darkness wherever one looked. Soon, said place would light up and be seen as a throne room. It seems like it's finally time. A handsome man in his 30s, with silver hair and blue eyes, he was sitting on his throne in said room, with his elbow resting on the rest of the throne, and his head resting on his raised hand. Thousands of years have passed since I've been here, and finally someone else achieved the same thing as me. That man would close his eyes for a moment. Son, truly you were a bastard, there is no doubt that you inherited more from Lilith than from me. And my grandson. You took a bad path because of your traumas and for hesitating to make a decision, despite how it inspired you. I hope at least you rest in peace. That man would look into nothingness. We will see each other soon, dear great-granddaughter. There is a lot you should know, it will be important for you to have your ideas even more clear so that you take the path you will follow completely. I just hope they don't hate me for what I had to do for father and so that our religion would be known. The silver-haired man would look into nothing while he went back to sleep a little, and within seconds. A large pair of bat-shaped wings with silver feathers unfolded from his back. The story of the one who was known as the Star of Tomorrow will be revealed soon. End. Author note: this is the end of the first part of the story. In about a month or two I will begin the beginning of the second part of the story. Follow me as an author so you don't miss the moment I publish it. Thank you for coming this far. See you on a new adventure. P.S. I would appreciate if you, my readers, could create a very good image that will be part of the cover of the second title of this story. Clarifications. Let's start with the small arc of the duel against Strata and Cristaldi. I decided to make it different from how the novel shows it in the canon, since that version seemed a little boring and even very simple to me, reason why I changed it a little. And the case of Jowa Durandal occurred to me while I was writing said cap with both duels. Now let's move on to the arc of the battle against Klepeth and the Trahixa. The reason I decided to have Valery and Tiamat get pregnant in this arc was to give more inspiration to the characters to succeed. And the other and main reason was so that they both had a little bit of the power of Great Red and Office with them. Because Valery and Tiamat had their undeveloped fetuses inside them with the genes of Issei, Great Red and Office in these, both suffered a small alteration in their biological system when they activated their new forms and endings. However, Valery and Tiamat cannot use as much power from Great Red and Office as Issei does, and that is the reason why they were not unconscious. In addition, their percentages of the power of Great Red and Office in them are only 10% each. With that, both are even more special cases, but from there they have hit the bottom of the growth of their powers. They just have to get used to these. I included Messiah in this arc and this part of the story to give more emotion and entertainment to the events. I even admit that I had fun writing about him. By the way, for those who don't know, Messiah is the first protagonist made by Ichie Ishibumi, the second is Tobio and Issei is the third, the latter having more story and being Ishibumi's favorite protagonist. Another thing I want to clarify is that at the beginning, since the Romania arc, I had included Razovam in the story so that he was just another character and I didn't have that many plans for him. But as the story progressed, I decided to give more depth to his character and make him the mastermind of Klepeth. And his way of doing things about a better world and the story of Lucifer in this fic came to mind as the story progressed. Also, I watched the anime again, Mayu Gakuin no Futeka Gausha, from which I based a little to create the story of Lucifer and his way of being. If you haven't seen said anime, watch it. It's very good. The inclusion of Balbrith, Varine and the artificial demons in this part of the story occurred to me after reading volume 24 to Shin 4 again. After analyzing in depth these volumes and the events that the canon told, I said to myself that Ishibumi came up with that part of the artificial demons out of nowhere. Because if Rizavam had her mother, Lilith, in possession of her, he must have taken advantage of her in the canon, since Balbrith, Varine and the artificial demons seemed easier to manipulate as they were just children with adult bodies. And that the evil dragons were with the Hell Alliance, so it made more sense. That's the reason why I decided to include them ahead of time, as well as Lint, who only made an appearance after volume 21, in the 22. And the part about Balbrith, Varine, Gressel and Senelian receiving intelligence suddenly occurred to me as the story progressed. It was also to show how Razovam wanted everything to be perfect and that he was better than Hades in the canon at using and educating the artificial demons, while the rest simply turned them into grotesque monsters with alchemy so as not to have problems with rebels. Since his grandfather, Lucifer, considered those who did not pay attention to him as replaceable. The inclusion of Kakabiel in this part of the story came to me for two reasons. One, to give him a better participation and finish with him once and for all. And the other, and the most important, is that after reading the events of the Kakabiel arc again, I realized that he was a somewhat wasted character and also an excuse on Ishibumi's part from my point of view to make peace between the three biblical sides. His plan in his arc was too simple, only guided by his desire to fight, which did not foresee the failures that would arise from trusting himself, and that is what disappointed me. Kakabiel would have been perfect in the Cows Brigade with his own group of renegade fallen, but that wasn't the case. That's why I included him here, and also because, as Razovam said, they've run out of powerful beings since they got rid of Apophis and Ozzy Dahaka to take advantage of their powers and lose Lilith Chan, Grendel, Layden, Yamada no Arachi and Krom Kruch. In addition to the Incinerate Anthem. The power of Sererg with the breakdown the beast of the Regulus Nemia to me seems incalculable even in the canon, since they say that it exceeds the Mao level, and that even Issei admits that he could not defeat him without his DXDG armor. Until for a moment I thought that Sererg was at the level of a super demon because of the way he fought Balbrith in the canon and defeated him. But from my point of view, using logic and that the Regulus Nemia is inferior to the boosted gear and the divine dividing, I can only say that, perhaps, the Nemian lion, Regulus, is on the same level as Tiffin in power. So Sererg with Breakdown the Beast is without a doubt in the world top 10, almost at the lowest position. I don't know completely. I'll see in the second title if I give it more development than in the canon, since the Regulus Nemia also has its own curse, and it's a matter of waiting if Sererg finds a way to dispel it. In my opinion, Ishibumi should give more development to the rest of the characters in the canon, since Issei is already complete and it is already a cliché to see his Oppai dragon powers all the time, overshadowing the rest who have more potential to exploit. I made Gressel fight against Sererg and his servants to give more excitement and entertainment to the story, in addition to demonstrating how very lethal and dangerous his ability, resistance, was. Since in the canon, it seemed too simple and easy that Tobio easily defeated him with his scythes and curses. I apologize if that was a spoiler for those who didn't read Shin 3. I'm sorry. At least here, Gressel died harder, and that more joint work was needed for this. Add that to his great honor as a warrior, thanks to the knowledge given by Razavam and his rituals to show that he was not entirely bad, he just followed orders, but that he was still someone with honor and who recognizes powerful beings just by seeing them and facing them. His resistance ability even made him so strong that it would put him in the world top 10. From Senelian, he seemed so pathetic to me in the canon that there was nothing that could change him. The fact that Messiah faced him and defeated him more easily seemed the most logical to me, a bit unlike Cao Cao in the canon. The confrontation between Crom Cruach and Balbrith occurred to me while I was writing the story. There is not much to highlight other than that Balbrith fought for what he believed was best and Crom Cruach saw that is why he did not kill him. Since Balbrith has the spirit and motivation to fight for what he believes in, even when he has no experience of the world itself. The confrontation between Cao Cao and Varine was a similar case. Also, for me this confrontation had more logic, unlike the canon, where I saw Varine's defeat at the hands of Riaz, Gaspar, Akeno, Roswis, Zenobia and Arena too forced. I mean, come on, Varine is an artificial super demon, being in the world top 10, and being defeated so easily by weaker opponents than her. I get angry and disappointed. At least here fighting against Cao Cao, her defeat to me made more sense, since we are talking about the true Longinus, the most powerful Longinus that even without balance breaker he can kill powerful gods and demons without any problem. Even Serziches would not stand a chance against Cao Cao, and that is why he and the rest of Mass were not allowed to fight Cao Cao in the events of Volume 12, since Cao Cao could kill them with several moves and a direct thrust. The reason I included Shalba, Kateria and Crucery again was for the same reason as Kakabiel, in that Clipeth no longer had powerful beings at their disposal, and also to provide a little more entertainment when they were easily humiliated and killed. It's fun to make fun of them, showing how pathetic they are. The case of Tiamat in Babylonian mythology occurred to me as I was writing the story. It turns out that it is possible that in the canon, Tiamat is only a dragon with that name as a reference to the goddess Tiamat of Babylonian mythology on behalf of Ishibumi, but without including said mythology in the canon. And that is the reason why I decided that Tiamat was a reincarnation of said goddess with her same name, and to have a power-up that makes sense, add that to the fetus undeveloped in his womb that gave him some of the power of Office and Great Red to transcend even more. His case as a reincarnation and that his mother has been his past life is similar to that of Piccolo from Dragon Ball, whose father was also his past life and he inherited his memories and mission, but at the end of the day, he is his own being. And Tiamat is too. Lucifuge, Satnachia, Agilirith, Flurity, Sargatanas and Abiros along with her faction, the True Mass, they are all characters in this story to show a little that Lucifer did not want to sacrifice all his people in the biblical war and demonstrating his value of self-sacrifice. Expect more from them in the second title. And as for Lucifuge's newest and youngest daughter, Ain, I have plans for her in the second title. Where the only spoiler I will give you is that she will become Valery's right hand. I accept more suggestions regarding Ain, if you have any. The part about how Issei, Valery and Asia were cornered in agrees by Razavam and Rizavam, I made it very different from what the canon shows in volume 20, which seemed boring and meaningless to me. Rizavam the only thing that what he did in the canon was that he wanted the Haidu parents to hate Issei by believing that they would reject him when they found out that he is no longer human and that his blood had changed, perhaps because of the way he understands them, as the holders of sacred gears are rejected, hated and feared by humanity, considering them monsters. Instead of taking advantage of them and using them as hostages the same way I did in this story. Since volume 20, I started to realize that Ishibumi doesn't make villains that good and that they are pathetic themselves. The inclusion of Valery's mother, Elizabeth, was to give more emotion to the story. And also as a gift to Valery from Razavam, indirectly, so that she would mature even more and understand that she should not alienate those she cares about. Elizabeth endured hell for her daughter and does not regret it, but Valery alienated her, believing that she had already been through a lot and that it was not fair for her to continue like this. He did the same Vali in the canon. Albrith and Varina said will now be members of the Haidu residence and will be on a type of probationary period, which will make them both main members of the story. Both have great potential as character development, so we will see that in the second title. The artificial sacred gears Longinus of Ozzy Dahaka and Apophis are an arc of this story. I spent days thinking about their forms and designs since Cap where both evil dragons were stripped of their bodies. The chants were not easy to make, as were the appearances of the base forms and armor of Balance Breaker and his own Juggernaut's drives. Both artificial sacred gears were the closest to original sacred gears, only with the defect that these could be destroyed and release the souls of said dragons, in addition that they cannot go to another host, since they are not connected to the sacred gear system of heaven. They had a good turnout while they lasted. In this story Asia does not have Fafnir, and I doubt she will ever need him. I gave her a certain development and improvement in her powers. Even with her balance breaker from this story, Asia's greatest strength is in her healing, defensive and support abilities, with barely acceptable offensive power. Even so, she still has room to grow and improve her different abilities, skills and other fields that you never thought were necessary. I'll see what I can think of for her in the second title. Valery's new armor and new wings, Dragon Luzbel Lucifer Drive, is similar and different to Vali's Lucifer Dragon Diabolos in the canon. This new form of Valery reflects the union of light and darkness, as well as how Valery finally decided to face his past and all his mistakes, accepting his light and darkness into his being. His Nephilim wings, although they are a single pair, are as big as his body or a little more, demonstrating his level of power and hierarchy, since I didn't see much sense in giving it 12 Nephilim wings. This form in itself is powerful, undoubtedly surpassing the celestial dragon level, but it still has more characteristics and battle potential to show, since that the situation with the Trahexa and the little time they had did not allow more of its abilities and how durable it is to be revealed. Her silver appearance with black, gold details and blue markings is thanks to her, now, new power as a Nephilim and part of Office's power. Issei's final armor, Dragon Infinity Dream Drive, is similar and different to the Diabolos dragon god from the canon. This armor is the same as the canon shows in appearance, only without the cannons of the Triania Alpha and only having 4 wings. And this form, in this story, is more powerful and balanced than the canon, added to the new fighting style that this Issei has. In my opinion, I have nothing against the Issei canon, but his fighting style is somewhat orthodox, and, although I admit that the Triania forms are cool, fascinating and powerful, they do not allow the Issei canon to have a better combat style. On the other hand, the Issei of this story, now without the Triania, has a more tactical combat style and better mastery with the sword, where close combat makes him more durable when fighting and not throwing energy attacks all the time to wear himself out. In other words, the Issei canon is a powerful idiot who rarely uses his head in a fight. The inclusion of all the gods from the mythologies already mentioned was to give more emotion to the plot and to make more sense when it came to sealing the Trahexa. Gods like Hades only helped in said battle reluctantly, since that although Hades hates the Alliance and the demons and fallen, he is a just god who looks after the good of the world and humans, so that is the logic and reason why I help. But obviously after this, he would start doing his thing again. The way the Trahexa was sealed was very complicated to write and think about. Since my original idea was for everyone to kill the Trahexa, since Drake's infernal flames and Albion's deadly poison would help a lot to weaken it and leave it vulnerable, but I used more logic based on how very strong it is. The Trahexa really, as strong as Great Red. It turns out that Shiva admits that she can't compare to Office in her prime, and even Office herself admits that Great Red is much stronger than her in her prime. So even weakened, it would be impossible to kill the Trahexa, especially due to the great fatigue that Issei and Valery suffered in their final armors. And even with the inclusion of Shiva, Brahma and Vishnu, it would technically be impossible to kill the Trahexa. So that's why I improvised while writing and created that method of how they sealed it. To be honest and in my opinion, I didn't see much logic as to why Ishibumi chose to make the majority of leaders of each faction seal themselves together with the Trahexa to defeat it, and as if the time it would take didn't matter. But whatever, in this story that case did not occur, and that in itself is very good. Since in the canon, Hades made his move after wanting to take advantage of the absence of the majority of leaders of each supernatural faction. But in this story that is not the case, so Hades and the future alliance of hell will be more limited to not doing their thing, added to the fact that they will all have to take their time to recover the energy they gave to create the Trahexa seal. The birth of Valery and Tiamat's twins thanks to the miracle of the true Longinus occurred to me after remembering the episode of Dragon Ball Super where Whis accelerated the birth of Bra. The reason I did this is because I didn't want to make a time jump from 9 to 10 months in the second title of the story since the battle against Trahexa and explain several things, such as making the other girls already in an official relationship with Issei out of the picture. There is still more things that must be developed, and that is why I did this. Just as Lucifuge said, Lucifer's royal family will recover what is rightfully theirs shortly. So for the second title we will see a new demonic government and there will be other events. The reason I had Loki freed at the end of this arc was so that he would have a better participation in the second title. In my opinion, Loki, like Gacabiel in the canon, was very wasted and even overconfident for attacking directly without a plan. And that mythology describes Loki as someone cunning who knows how to do things well. Even the Loki of Marvel is more liar, cunning and smarter than its DxD version. So I will give it a better participation in the second title. And I still haven't planned on whether he will be part of the Alliance of Hell or whether it will exist in this story, but we will see that over time. I'll go and say again that because of Loki's way of being DxD, that shows that Ishibumi doesn't create good villains, and it seems like he didn't even try to make them. Ella is a character already mentioned in the novel, and she only made an appearance in a short canon story called Pavilion Kingdom, where she was willing to face Odin and the DxD team in order to free her father. Issei in said short story even describes her as weaker than Loki and was able to take her by surprise to use the dress break on her and finish her off. His canons. But in the second title of this story, he will have a better development when it comes to fighting. I apologize for this spoiler in case no one knew. I'm really sorry. Sigyn, in case you don't know, she is Loki's second wife, according to mythology. She is the goddess of fidelity, and she has only given Loki 2 more children, Narfi and Vali in this story, according to mythology. And the wolf dog shown almost at the end is Garm, someone who accompanies Hela in Helheim. About Valery's new sword, Kanhiakoikia, I don't have much to say. But as a spoiler and gift, I will say that Lucifer's total soul is in said sword. And as for how powerful said sword is, well, perhaps at the level of a divine weapon of the gods, although we will see that in the second title, since the tension of the battle did not allow more of Valery's abilities and his new weaponry to be revealed. And that Lucifer himself appeared at the end, it was to give a surprise, and that he is in said sword with his own physical field. Anyway, to finish. If you have any questions or if I need to explain something, don't hesitate to comment. And as a last detail, here is the updated world top 10 of this story. As I said before, judge it and correct me if I'm wrong or wrong about something. World top 10. First place. Office with her 100% power. Second place. Shiva. Third place. Elohim, Brahma, Vishnu, Indra, Mahabali, Office with half of his power and Lilith. Fourth place. Issei with his DxD ID, Valery with his DxD LL, Tiamat with her power as goddess, released plus what she can use from Office and Great Red's power, Krom Kruich, Messiah, Cao only by the Trulonginus and Ra. Fifth place. Drake, Albion, Shenlong, Tianlong, Surziches with his 100% unleashed, Quetzalcoatl after training for so many years to face Drake again plus his transformation, Amaterasu with his transformation and power at 100%, and Anubis, Horus, Nehema with the power of Ozzy Dahaka and Razavim with the power of Apophis. Sixth place. Surziches, Ajuka, Balbrith, Varine, Kali, Tiamat in the past, and their current power without Office and Great Red Apophis, Ozzy Dahaka, Amaterasu, Susanoo and Tsukiyomi, both with their transformations and 100% can. Seventh place. Hades, Susanoo, Tsukiyomi and Quetzalcoatl with their power from the past. Eighth place. Izanagi, Pacha, Yun Kimmel and Tezcatlipoca. Ninth place. Thor, La, Vidar, Ishtar, Izanami, Varksada, Inti, Zamanek, Louis Sin, Rajan and Tanadia. 10th place. Fenrir, Tiffin, Ahura Mazda, Ereshkigal, Taranis, Zervan, Vichama, Saraerg with Breakdown the Beast and Gressel, thanks to her increased power and resistance after fighting Saraerg. Note. I remind you again, Great Red is not part of the world top 10, but it is still the most powerful. Same for the Trahixa. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.